Welcome to tonight's meeting. Today is June 4th, and we can start, please, with a Pledge of Allegiance. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I would like to know if it's time for the announcement, reportable action, closed session. But before our acting Vice President Derek Nell shares with you, I just wanted to make an announcement that our current president is out of town, so she won't be here tonight, Debbie Butler. But we'll have Derek Nell as acting Vice President, and I'll be acting President. Okay.
All right, so a report out of a closed session with respect to item discussed in closed session pursuant to Government Code 54957 and 54957.6, conference with labor negotiator Chris Casca, Deputy Superintendent of Human Resources and Strategic Planning, and our employee organization, the Novato Federation of Teachers. We listened to the report and gave direction to staff. On item 3C, we discussed in closed session pursuant to Government Code 54957 and 54957.6, conference with labor negotiator Chris Casa, Deputy Superintendent, Human Resources and Strategic Development, and employee organization California School Employee Association, better known as CSEA, and that was for information only. And that concludes our closed session announcements.
Thank you very much. Just wanted to say it's a little bit hot here tonight. Air conditioning is not working, but we'll try to survive, and hopefully we'll be down by 10. Okay, so then we want to go to our next item, which is approval of agenda.
So, Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to rearrange tonight's agenda, which would be to take item 15A, which is the board acceptance of the Parcel Tax Oversight Committee 2017-18, the annual report. And I would like to ask the board if they would consider moving that up to item 13A. So it would be our, though it would still remain a discussion action item, it would be something that we would take earlier in the evening prior to some of the lengthy business. So I'll make that motion.
Okay, great.
I'll have you recognize first.
I'll recognize Trustee Mack and first, and okay. We'll continue with that.
I'll vote.
So let's vote, and everybody in favor? Okay, 6-0, 1 absent. Okay, we'll go ahead and move it to 13A. Let's do that. Right, let's do that now. Okay. Okay, oh no, public comment on consent agenda. Okay, so with public comment on consent agenda, I have one blue card, and these are located right behind you guys at the table, and they're both Spanish and English. And if you could please fill it out and write down all the information, and then please hand it to Sally, and then I will call your name when it's your turn. All right, so okay, so that's the only one, and we're going to go ahead and move to item 9, approval of. Yeah, now we're going to move to item 9, approval of the consent agenda. Does anybody want to take anything out?
So I'd like to make a motion to take item 16K on our consent agenda, and ask the board to consider its adoption after we hear the staff report 13A from Education Trust West, rather than approve the resolution as a part of the consent agenda. We'd do it afterwards.
It's a good idea. We'll hear the report first. Okay, so we got Derek was 1, and second, and then Trustee Cooper a second. Okay, all in favor?
We're voting the whole consent agenda.
The motion is, the motion is to move 16K. With conclusion of that vote, I think we should consider the consent agenda afterwards. I'm willing to amend my, just make it easier.
Are you looking to
We
move
just,
K
we want to make sure we,
right after 13?
It's going to be part of 13A.
Perfect.
we want to hear the report first before we approve the resolution.
So how about this? Trustee Milrick's got a good idea. I will amend my motion to adopt the consent agenda as amended by pulling 16K to 13, to be merged with 13A, and so we can pass the consent agenda at the same motion. So I will amend my motion. Second was Mr. Cooper.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Okay, all in favor? Okay, 6-0, 1 absent. Motion passes.
Thank you
Okay.
for the clarification.
Yeah, no, good suggestion. Thank you.
All right, we'll do that. And now, so let's go ahead and do the board acceptance of, I'm sorry, the resolution. We're ready to, no, hold on a second. The presentation, we have two presentations today, school fuel, tour of Novato, and Linwood Elementary School. But let's hear school fuel first. And I want to acknowledge, we have the mayor of Novato, Eric Lukens here, and he's donating his own bicycle.
Wow.
Okay. Mike.
Okay. Hi, I'm Susan Matthews. I'm the Executive Director of School Fuel, and with me is Dale Klein, who is our School Fuel's Tour of Novato Coordinator. We've got several School Fuel board members here too, Ricardo, Catherine, Kate. We've got our webmaster over there, Jeff, and we have some important donors here tonight too, and we just want to tell you about all the good news from this year's Tour of Novato. And a little bit about us too. We're the Education Foundation supporting all of our Novato schools. This year we continued Tour Novato, which we've been doing since 2007. And we had a lot of great things about this year, including the largest number of individual schools participate with booths at the community fair. We had student performers, I think the most ever. We had 160 kindergarten Zumbers. And we had students all the way through 12th grade performing different acts. We had students of all ages included in our art show that was happening in City Hall. We gave away hundreds of free books, and we had lots of displays of student activities going on, and we had 422 registered participants who either walked or rode on one of the routes. And some of our favorite pictures from kindergarten Zumba and the family ride, San Jose Jazz Band, so big they couldn't even all fit on the stage, and our community fair. And at the close of our fundraising, we had raised $80,242 this year, which brings us to $992,264 since the event was founded, which was just painfully close to that $1 million mark. So our mayor, Eric Luken, and our coordinator, Dale Klein, said, we got to make it to $1 million. We're going to reach out and see if we can find just a little bit more. And luckily, Wells Fargo, Genentech, Bank of Marin, Hennessy Cornerstone Value Fund, and BioMarin all helped out. And we ended up at $88,260. So thanks a million, everybody. And now, we're going to give away either this cool bike or your choice of a men's style cool bike. And we have some drawing we're going to do right now. All right.
So whoever volunteered gets to have their name in there?
All of the a slip of the raffle. The winner is Lori Giannino, who was our coordinator from Loma Verde.
Ah.
And we had some other prize drawings. I'm just going to say their names really quickly. Sylvia Berry and Roy Gale both won gift certificates to Celine's Sweets. Allison Waterworth and Elizabeth Shaw both won Sukha Yoga gift certificates. And Joyce Kohlenbrander won a nice rustic bakery gift certificate. So, yay. You want to say one?
Real quick.
All right.
So the number that you see is the amount, the cumulative fundraising that all of the parents and people that participate raise, as well as the extra amount that was raised this year from a couple of key business sponsors. I want to make, they're here today, so I actually want them to come up so that we can recognize them. Come on up, please. So we have a representative from the Bank of Marin and a representative from BioMarin. Bank of Marin supports us both directly and indirectly through schools rule to the tune of well over $5,000 a year, all right? So it's a huge contribution to our community. BioMarin was a $3,000 sponsor this year.
And also a schools rule contributor.
And also a schools rule contributor. Hennessy Funds couldn't be here. They were another $3,000 contributor to the end of the event. And then if you go to our website, there are literally close to 100 businesses in this community that step up to support us. I can't say enough about them and their efforts. Parents, we have a vested interest. There's something in it for us. Not everybody outside of the parent group understands that they too have a vested interest, but these businesses are exemplary of the kind of people we have in our community and businesses in our community that get it. So I just wanted to call them out specifically for that. Group photo? Raw, come on.
Come on, Mayor.
I go to the meeting.
One last word. Jeff Wilson, who I've got my arm around right here, he and another parent at Hamilton are actually the founders. They're the ones that got this all going.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor. Okay. Thank you, Mayor Lucan. Okay, so next we have our wonderful school, Linwood Elementary School, and we have a presentation by our students and Melissa Diaz, our principal. So thank you for coming.
Good evening. We are super excited to be here tonight. So sit back and relax and enjoy. We're going to start with a performance. This is Ms. Rojas's first grade class, and they are going to do a performance for you, and then we have prepared a video for you as well.
Test.
El cuento que vamos a recitar hoy está en verso. Su autor es Rubén Darío, uno de los mayores poetas de todos los tiempos. Margarita. Este era un rey que tenía un palacio de diamantes, una tienda de día y un rebaño de elefantes. Un kiosco de malaquita, un gran manto de tisú y una gentil princesita tan bonita, Margarita, tan bonita como tú. La quería para hacerla decorar un prendedor con un beso y una perla, una pluma y una flor. Las princesas primorosas se parecen mucho a ti, cortan lirios, cortan rosas, cortan astros, son así. Pues se fue la niña Bea bajo el cielo y sobre el mar a cortar la blanca estrella que la hacía suspirar. Y siguió camino arriba por la luna y más allá, más lo malo que iba sin permiso de papá. Cuando estaba ya de vuelta de los parques del Señor, se miraba todo envuelto en un dulce resplandor. Y el rey dijo, ¿qué te has hecho? Te he buscado y no te hallé. ¿Y qué tienes en el pecho que encendido se te ve? La princesa no mentía y así dijo la verdad. Fui a cortar la estrella mía a la azul inmensidad. Y el rey clama, ¿no te he dicho que el azul no hay que cortar? ¡Qué locura, qué capricho, el Señor se va a enojar! Y ella dice, no hubo intento, yo me fui no sé por qué, por las olas, por el viento, fui a la estrella y la corté. Y el papá dice enojado, un castigo has de tener, vuelve el cielo y lo robado vas ahora a devolver. La princesa se entristece por su dulce flor de luz, cuando entonces aparece sonriendo el buen Jesús. Y así dice, en mis campiñas esa rosa le ofrecí, son mis flores de las niñas que al soñar piensan en mí. Dice el rey, ropas brillantes y luego hace desfilar 400 elefantes a la orilla de la mar. La princesita está bella, pues ya tiene el prendedor, en que lucen con la estrella verso, perla, pluma y flor. Vamos a cantar la canción que canten los niños.
They will now sing a song for you.
Los niños que hacen la voz, que hagan al mundo escuchar, que unan sus voces y lleguen al sol, en ellos está la verdad. Que canten los niños que viven en paz, que aquellos que sufren dolor
That was excellent. Sit down. Sit down for me. Go ahead and sit down.
Well, that was wonderful. Thank you very much. And
We have a video as well.
Sorry guys, low volume.
Linwood Elementary School. I really like Spanish because it's a really
Is this
new
gonna make it
language
bigger?
and I'm getting really good at it. And it's really fun to learn it because my teacher talks fully
Sally, where do you
Spanish.
think it comes
And I really like that because it's a new, because I could talk in Spanish and write in Spanish and read in Spanish. It's really cool.
It's all the way up. Yeah.
Yo me gusta aprender español.
Hi, my name is Eden Tebow.
Can anybody hear that?
I am a
Okay.
transitional.
So I'm gonna wing it because that's what I do best.
So, good evening. My name is Melissa Diaz. Can I mic it? You okay with that? Perfect. You know how I like the mic. My name is Melissa Diaz, and I am the proud principal. As you can see, I'm up here bawling as they're singing and reciting to me. This is, like I had mentioned, Miss Rojas's first grade class. And I don't know if you noticed, but they had a prompt behind them, which tells me that they're reading in Spanish, which thrills me to no end. So what you would have seen in the video is we are currently serving 109 students in the dual immersion program. So we have students in TK, K, and first grade that are learning in Spanish. We have packets for you that we've provided some informational, the green folders that you have has information about our program. So what you'll find in there is our executive summary, and it talks about Linwood in general. We have some parent testimonials about their experiences in the dual immersion program, as well as our program and some of the guiding principles that we're utilizing to continue to make this program successful and flourish. And parents and students, I wanted to ask for a favor. So the board has supported this implementation, so I would like us to honor that and give them a round of applause, please. I'm sorry the video didn't work out. It was fabulous, and I can share it with you. I'll send an email, and we would love to welcome you out to our site at any time. Many of you have come out and experienced the wonders of Linwood in general, but also what's happening in our dual immersion classes.
thank you very much. Thank you. That was wonderful. Muchas gracias. And so, okay, board, trustee Miller.
Melissa, good evening.
Hi.
Your tears are well placed. It's probably been 150 years since the Novato School District has heard a lesson in Spanish in this boardroom. This is an amazing time. California was founded as a bilingual, bicultural state, and we are celebrating that part of our heritage tonight in person with new citizens in Novato exercising those new skills, and I am tickled pink. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having us tonight.
Thank you very much. Okay. All right. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you. Yes. Yes.
So I would just like to echo that. I think if I could wave a magic wand and have every student in our district graduate being bilingual, I think that's one of the best skills we could give them. And that every student had that seal of biliteracy, because we know that's going to be a valuable, valuable asset. It's a strength that these young kids will have. And we think that's really, really important. So I also want to thank the parents who took a risk on this program that didn't exist before, and you guys are the guinea pigs, and here's one of the awesome results. And again, thank the board, because the board took a lot of time to plan this out for the last 3 years. And then finally to Principal Diaz, you know, you've been the first principal and probably one of the more passionate, amazing people we have. I couldn't think of a better principal to be supporting this program than you. So really, really a proud moment, and thanks to everybody.
Thank you so much. And really quickly, I forgot to do this because the video screwed me up, but real quick, my staff is here that teaches our students, and I really want to honor them because without them, this would not be possible. So I'd like to ask them to come up so I can introduce them, please. So starting in our TK program is Eden Tebow. Teaching kindergarten is Deborah Madsen. Also teaching kindergarten is Jasmine Settles. One of our first grade teachers, Melanie Gutierrez. And one of our first grade teachers, Digna Rojas. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And I'd like to say something to the parents. En español, obviamente, quisiera darles gracias por enseñarles a sus hijos el español y el inglés. Y es importante que sean bilingües y biculturales. So just saying that, pretty much repeating what our principal said, the importance of being bilingual and bicultural. So thank you very much to the parents. Okay. Okay.
Maybe the teachers could come up for a photo behind the students. That'd be awesome. That'd be neat.
And maybe the staff too, the staff?
Yeah, any staff would be great that's here. Have to scrunch in, Melissa. Maybe somebody can kneel or something. Here you go. That was awesome. Woo! Nice job.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh.
We should, yeah, I'd give him a second just because. Yeah, that's that's when you should. Yeah. Yeah.
So Linwood still has a school field recognition.
Who does?
That they want to do Linwood.
Oh, really?
She's just, yeah.
Who? Melissa?
You want to do recognition?
Okay, maybe just say there's one more announcement from Linwood.
Okay, I just wanted to say that there's one more announcement from Linwood. Your mic is not working.
Better?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Donna Hoffeditz. I work in the library at Linwood. And as we started dual immersion, I realized we don't have enough Spanish books for anything. We had a really good Spanish section until I realized they're teaching them in Spanish, and the kids are going to come in and say, oh, wow, we're learning about ladybugs. What books do you have on ladybugs? Or they want to be able to read. And we've got first graders who have moved beyond the reading curriculum and the reading books, and now they're coming in for higher reading books. So School Fuel, who has been so supportive of the Novato libraries for years, put out the enrichment grant opportunity, and they opened it to elementary school this year. And so I applied, and they gave me $5,000. I was able to purchase about 250 quality hardcover books that will be around for years and years and years. Their younger siblings will see them. They'll be around forever. They're not going to just fall apart like paperbacks. So the kindergarten and first graders made a thank you card for School Fuel. Susan. They kept asking me, what am I doing? I'm like, you're writing a thank you note.
Yeah.
You know? Okay, thanks. Thank you so much.
And I believe our superintendent, don't leave, I believe our superintendent.
So
has been
I believe
sick.
also that the principal was agreed to be duct taped to the wall if Linwood raised over $500. Is that correct?
5,000.
5,000. Thank you. Excuse me. So can you tell us when that's going to be? And you are going to be upside down, right?
I am not upside down. It's going to be on Friday, this coming Friday, the 7th, and it's starting about 9:45, and I believe they're removing the stool around 11. So if you'd like to come out, the Novato Advance and the IJ are going to be present for this event. Thank you for that. I appreciate
Thank you.
that,
I
Jim.
just want to bring attention to your wonderful school, and thank you, everybody.
It's what I'll do for the school, you know that.
That's right. Thank you.
I'd like to thank both presenters, School Fuel, Susan Matthews, and thank you again, our principal, Melissa Diaz. Okay. Thank you. All right, we're now moving to our next item, which is the announcements from the board and the superintendent. And we'll start with our trustees, student trustees.
Hi, I'm Jimena Lara from San Marin High School. I just have a few announcements today. It's currently dead week. Finals week is next week. We recently had our Scholar Awards night where students were recognized for their academic achievements, and it went really well. Our prom was last weekend at the Hyatt Regency and was very successful. Our senior breakfast is this Friday at 7 a.m. Grad practice is next Friday from 9 to 11 a.m. And next Friday is the graduation ceremony at 7 p.m. On the football field, and STEM Awards night is tomorrow at 6:30 p.m.
Okay, she's also being humble. She was one of the students that had received a lot of awards. So.
Woo! Jimena. Okay, cool. Hi, I'm McKenna O'Neill from Novato High School. Our senior breakfast is tomorrow at 7 a.m. and our graduation is next Friday on the field on the 14th at 5 p.m. And then our graduation practice is a Thursday before. And then we just had a mental health awareness week, which was put on by one of our clubs at school. And they had like a bunch of cute little activities to do, and then passports where you like went around and you like wrote down what you did each day. So one was like compliments, and you wrote down like who you gave a compliment to. One was gratitude. You wrote down 5 things that you're like grateful for. We recently added, I think the district added it, the CPR training, and today I personally completed my CPR training at San Marin High School because I'd missed it a few times, but I did it. Dead week, we're not saying dead week anymore because dead is not good. And then we had our prom a few weeks ago, and it went very well. I don't know what we call it. We call it the week before finals week.
I like it.
And that is all.
Much?
Hi, my name is DJ, and I'm from Marin Oaks. Last week we had awards night on Thursday, and many students were recognized for their excellence. Many of the seniors received scholarships that totaled $29,400. Last Friday was also our field day. It was an end-of-the-year celebration, and there were tons of activities. The culinary option made delicious homemade guacamole and salsa, and there was dancing, ceramics, sports, and more. Also, our principal, Ms. Early, was honored with the ACSA Administrator of the Year Award, and we were very proud of her. We are also preparing for finals next week in the last few days of school, and our graduation will be held next Thursday at 6 p.m.
Okay, Trustee Miller? Okay. Trustee Gasson?
Hi. So just a couple of things. Among all the chaos that's going on at the schools, the performances and the events and things they've got going on, I wanted to make note of the event at Sinaloa on last Friday. They did an open house and a family night. I thought it was great. What I really liked was there were a ton of fifth grade families that came to take a look at the school. And I thought that was really helpful and rather timely, before the end of the school, seeing what it's like, getting a chance to be on campus. My daughter was supposed to pie Mr. Larson, but we went home, so we missed that. The other thing of note was on the 24th, I was in an event with about 25 people to meet with Senator McGuire. During the course of his conversation and his update, he let me know that they're working on a, I want to say measure, but it's not, a bill, legislature that will work or focus on mental health in schools. He said that they're really pushing to see that coming soon, that the plan is only for 3 years, but that they're aware that that's something that needs to be funded. The other thing that I noticed was at a couple of PTA meetings I recently went to is that they are already making plans for how they're going to budget the next year, given the changes that we've made or the budget cuts, and how they impact each school. So they're looking at ways to kind of pick up some of the things that we will not be doing, like the print shop. And I wrapped up with today going to a really wonderful ceremony, graduation ceremony for adult ed. Was pleasantly surprised to see a friend there was actually a teacher, and was just inspired by the students who spoke, and I thought it was just a really wonderful event, and I very appreciated the opportunity to be there.
Actually, Trustee Millerick?
Yeah, pardon me. I had the opportunity to attend services for Leslie Schwartz, and Tom joined me. So the board was represented, the district was represented. She's been a huge contributor to this community and to this education system, and I was, and the services were very respectful and honorable, and a lot of us miss her contribution to the town.
A couple weeks ago, I went to the ribbon cutting for the North Bay Children's Center new wing that on land that they're effectively we're loaning to them, so to speak. It was a great ceremony only because I got to see a lot of kids that I actually knew that started there and went all the way through Novato High, and now they're coming back. So it's a nice way to see kids starting that young in our community, growing up through our high schools and then coming back and becoming teachers and coaches. So it's really fulfilling event for me. Secondly, a couple of MSA events. Went to the rock band event, if you will, at Hop Monk. And while the music was great, as always, it was fun to see so many teachers there, as well as students who aren't in rock band. It's a great event for the seniors to have their one last gig in front of all their friends. And what was really touching is how so many of the seniors on stage went out of their way to thank their teachers that were present and their coaches, which was not really asked for, but it was just so neat to see. And then last but not least, I did go to the MSA Foundation luncheon to start facilitating the process of how to use the Performing Arts Center. Or actually, what's the new name of it? It's not the PAC anymore, but arts, anyway. And it was a good discussion talking about just what's involved, how we're going to use it outside of class hours, those sort of things. So lots to come forward on that, and also to work across town between both PACs to figure out how we're going to do it. That's it.
Thank you very much, Trustee Mack. And now Trustee Cooper.
I went to the Marin Oaks and Nova Awards ceremony, and great event, very inspiring to hear the stories and listen to Kessa relay all the great stories of the students. So it was wonderful.
Yeah, I too attended the Marin Oaks Nova Award ceremony with Trustee Cooper. It was a lot of money awarded. I forget the amount, but it was tens of thousands of dollars. And I also attended the school fuel board meeting to represent the rest of you, and precursor to the presentation that you saw tonight. So we pulled that off.
Okay, Thank you. I attended on the 22nd. I went to the San Marine Senior Awards, and that's when our trustee get awards. Tom Cooper and I, and some of you were over at the Golden Bell Awards. And Trustee Neal was there, and I want to especially thank our superintendent Jim Hogaboon. He did an excellent job with being the MC, and so it was a great event, and we were very proud of it. Proud of our teachers, proud of our staff, and everybody that helped out. On the 31st, I attended the Msa Awards. Again, just what talent we have in our district. And our teachers are just amazing. Our students are just willing and able to learn and share their talents. So they were all awarded, and I was very proud of them. I didn't attend Leslie Schwartz thing. I was passing kidney stones that day. So, we will miss her for sure, and she's the one on the third sign, so picture. Okay, so we're moving, it's our superintendent. I'm sure you have announcements?
The first announcement is we've hired Jeff Wallace to be the principal of Sinaloa Middle School, and we're really excited to have him. He was he actually taught at Nexus, and then he was a math teacher at Novato High School, also the athletic director, also coached soccer, knows a lot of kids. He's a relatively young guy with a couple kids. He lives in Novato. He's been the principal. He was a vice principal and a principal at John Swett High School over in the East Bay. So we're really excited to have him. He was over here yesterday working with Principal Larson to hire some math teachers, and actually I think they found somebody, so that was great news, and we'll bring him here to meet you guys soon. Today was the adult ed graduation, so Trustee Gasson, thank you for being there. We had about 15 students, some who were 30 years old with a couple kids who have had the resilience to come back and graduate from high school, so that was pretty exciting. Happy about that. I'd also say that in addition to the Marin Oaks, I think had a record with $29,000, I think is the money that they received in scholarships, but really want to thank the Rotary also, because our Rotary, I think, has 27, some amazing number of scholarships. I think it was 27 that they've given out to our students from Marin Oaks, Novato High, and San Marin. So they've just done an amazing job, and they wanted to thank our counselors, because last year we didn't get that many applications, and this year they had a plethora of applications, so that was good because it went to the students most deserving. Lastly, I would like to thank our student trustees. It's been a pleasure working with you guys, and personally, I think that the student voice, and I know the board feels, is really important. We know it takes your time to be here at night, especially when you have finals coming up that we know all of you guys are going to ace. But back in the fall, when you guys went with us up to Sacramento to learn about Legislative Action Day, we really think that student voice is incredibly important, and we appreciate your commitment to be here. So we have little certificates for you that if you guys want to come over. So DJ Stratton, you want to come over, and thank you very much from Marin Oaks. We'll switch microphones. McKenna O'Neill from Novato High School, thank you, thank you. And last, Jimena Lara from San Marin. Thank you, thank you.
Yay. Photo.
That's a good idea.
Okay, thank you very much, student trustees. Actually, I would like to ask that you, I know it's times for finals and you guys gotta go home pretty soon, but if possible, if you guys can stick around for the restorative justice part, and we're on time, so it should be about 8:30, and because we believe that your voice is very important, and we just like to hear some of your feedback, so if possible. Okay, so now we're moving on to non-agenda public comments. I don't see any, so we'll go ahead and do the discussion action item that we moved up. That's 15A. And I'd like to remind the board that we'd be mindful of the time and stick to our time commitment that we've committed for the public and for ourselves, and that we are and staff. And I know it's hot, and it's so we want to stick to our time. Okay, go ahead, and we'll do discussion action board acceptance of the Parcel Tax Oversight Committee, and I'd like to introduce Lisa Swanson, who is part of the committee. Thank you very much.
Alrighty, I'm going to sneak in here just to say something wonderful about Lisa and the committee. So the Citizens Oversight Committee for our parcel tax is a very important committee, really to ensure accountability for the vote that the funds that the voters have so generously voted in time after time for this district to help support the students in their education. It's tireless. It's thankless work, and I just wanted to thank Lisa and the whole committee as well. We have another member in the audience, Alan Harris, so wave, Alan. And so I just wanted to say thank you to them, and then turn it over to Lisa, who you really want to hear from.
Yes. Thank you.
Good evening, trustees. I have to move this down to my height. My name is Lisa Swanson, and I am here representing the Parcel Tax Oversight Committee, which consists of Alan Harris, Ross Ingalls, Scott Keene, Michelle Roberts, Jackie Seisel, Wendy Seisel, myself. Diane Gasson is the trustee liaison to the boards. The charge of this committee is to ensure that the special tax proceeds are spent for their authorized purposes, and to report annually to the boards and the public regarding the expenditure of those funds. You should have a copy of the report in front of you. It goes over several things. One is the overview of the measure. One is the overview of the committee and its work, a letter from the committee, as well as a detail of what the funds are used for. The parcel tax is $251 per parcel currently, which has not been increased since 2009. It was last approved by the voters for an extension in 2014 and will go until 2022. The parcel tax brings in about $4.16 million, and that is spent in categories. The bulk of that is about 30% for attracting and retaining qualified and experienced teachers and avoiding significant increases in class sizes. And that equals about 1.2 million. And then we have 22% of the parcel tax, which is for secondary counseling, and that's about 921,000. And then 18% of it goes to music and performing arts, which is about 758,000. 15% of that goes to our libraries, which is about 609,000, and 14% of that goes to athletics, and that funds 88 athletic coaching positions, as well as some other fees and a little bit of the athletic directors. The committee reached the conclusion that the Measure A parcel tax funds have been in accordance with the language of the measure as approved by the voters. And I'll take any questions.
Okay, board, any questions? No question, okay. Just wanted to clarify, trustee Gasson is, she's on the board, this committee, but it's non-voting. So I just
Yes.
wanted to clarify that, okay. Any questions? Okay. Okay,
The report?
okay, so that's first by trustee Millerick. Any second, trust Diane Gasson? And discussion, any discussion? No? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Okay, so that would be 6-0, 1 absent. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
You're going to do it again next year, right? Thank you.
So now, we go back to staff report, and we're going to 13A, Education Trust, West Equity Report Update. And I just, and Amy Carter will speak with us, to us, and just wanted to let the board know we have a new item on the table, which is an addition to her presentation. Go ahead, Amy, Dr. Carter.
Yes. Yep. So it feels like every time I'm in front of you, we're having conversations around closing the opportunity gap in Marin. You can see that a lot of our work in education services is really focused on this. As you well know, we're a member of the Marin Promise Partnership. Where Novato has our equity statement, which we're proud of, that's something we've stood by since the 1990s. The Marin Promise Partnership has theirs that says racial equity for students in Marin will be achieved when race and ethnicity no longer predict the outcome of a young person's educational future. So we are very converged on our beliefs, and as part of this work that we do within Marin Promise, we started exploring a little examination with Ed Trust West. Ed Trust has been kind enough to come in with the support of Marin Promise Partnership and all of our nonprofit partners to help us really examine our system and come to some findings on how and where we can do better around the achievement gap. So I'm going to introduce the Ed Trust West team. Thank you.
Hi there. I am here from Marin Promise Partnership. So before you do hear from the Education Trust West, I wanted to introduce myself and give a little bit of background about the work that we're doing. So good evening. And you will see on the screens that this is a partnership that includes all of the high school districts. It includes community-based organizations, county government, post-secondary institutions. So it really is a broad network of partners who come together to do this work around educational equity and closing the achievement gap. My name's Juliet. I'm a member of the Backbone team, and we support all of the work that is happening across the partnership. So my role is facilitator of the College Readiness Action Team around policy. So that's where my role is with this. And what you saw in the packets and what the community is learning now is that we do have structural educational inequities across the county. And so across the county, we decided to take a look at this. And when I say we, I mean this action team. And it does include all of the high school districts who are working together to try and figure out what's needed to close these achievement gaps. And what they know is that no one can do it alone. Our districts have been working really hard. Our teachers have been working hard. Our counselors work hard. And there's no blame for anybody. This really is a lift that has to include the community partners. It has to include the families, and it has to include the schools. So that's part of the reason that this action team came together, was to work on this policy and to figure out what policies are needed in order to enact more equitable outcomes. So why are we called Keeping Every Door Open? This is really important to the team. Keeping every door open is an idea that we need to prepare students for college and career, not either or. And we really believe that no student between the age of 14 and 18 should be making lifelong decisions about their outcome, and neither should the community itself. So what we mean by keeping every door open is just that college isn't closed to anybody, that the military, if they choose to go into that, if they choose to go to a career, but we want to be really clear that we need the support so that every student is academically prepared. That way, if they do start in the military and then later decide that they want a bachelor's degree, they don't have to start in a community college to get there. They're already prepared. And I know I presented to the board about a year ago, and one of the main concerns that we hear is it's not just an access issue, it's a support issue. We want to make sure that students are not just placed into classes, but that our students who are acquiring a second language are able to do well in these classes, that our special education students have the right and can be college prepared as well. And so we're really clear that that's part of the work that we're trying to do. So keeping every door open is really about making sure that those supports are there so that all students graduate with both college and career readiness by 2025. So who is on this action team doing the work? You will see that it does include our 4 high school districts, that we have the support of our backbone team, that the Education Trust West was brought in over this past year to do these equity audits and to help support this work. And then we have our community-based organizations and our post-secondary institutions. This is really important because sometimes we find out that there's a barrier that we can't address at the school district level or at the community-based level. And so we need all the partners to figure out how we do this together. What is the lift that we can do together and share this burden? So for example, sharing teachers from College of Marin might be a possibility, that kind of thing, concurrent enrollment, et cetera. I did add that the how is the Strive Together National Grant was part of the money that helped to pay for the Education Trust West. And this community is the only community on the West Coast that received this grant. So they're really investing in our communities because they believe that this model works, and the model of doing this equity audit and then leading into a blueprint plan is something that they're excited about across our state. And next, I know there's a lot on this slide, but there is a timeline that we're working within. So the first phase was to complete these equity audits with our high school districts. So Novato, you're leading the way, and shortly after, we have San Rafael and Shoreline who will be doing similar presentations with their boards. And so we're just completing these equity audits, and we're looking into next year, which would be the blueprint planning, starting in the summer. And the blueprint planning, again, is coming up with the supports that would be needed for all students. And then phase 3 is the implementation of those supports. So making sure if it's concurrent enrollment or if we need the help of our post-secondary institutions, et cetera, that that's in place for the class of 2025. So I know you're anxious to hear about the equity report, so I want to make sure to hand it off so that there's time for that and time for questions. So I'm going to reintroduce Rachel Ruffalo and her team, and they'll share the findings at the report. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Juliet, and good evening, Superintendent Hogaboom and trustees. I will go ahead and introduce our whole Ed Trust West team who's here tonight. Again, I'm Rachel Ruffalo, Senior Practice Associate with Ed Trust West.
Good evening, I'm Sarah Feldman, the Director of the Practice Team.
Hi, good evening, I'm Mayra Lara with Ed Trust West.
All right. So last December, I presented to you about the educational equity audit that we were embarking with the district on at that time. And today we're pleased to be reporting to you our key findings and recommendations on our research in phase 1. As you may recall, our research involved both qualitative and quantitative metrics, including a broad range of stakeholders. So this included here in Novato, interviews with 14 district office personnel, site visits and focus group meetings with students, teachers, counselors, parents, school administrators at each of the 3 high schools, surveys with students, parents, and school staff at each of the 3 high schools, and a really excellent community conversation that we were pleased to co-facilitate here at the district office with the help of district office facilitators. And in that meeting, we met with and heard from about 50 different community participants who included students, parents, staff, and community members. And in addition, well, actually, at this time, I really do want to thank the Novato Unified School District community and all the stakeholders and parents and students and staff and the board members. It's been great to be working with you all, and we appreciate your energy and time and commitment to really helping to understand this important issue of equity and how it plays out here in the district. So thank you. We also, in addition to all the stakeholder input, we also conducted a transcript analysis, and this was in partnership with an organization called School by Design, which I mentioned in December. And in that analysis, we looked at course taking patterns for students in the class of 2018. And we wanted to examine issues of access and success in college preparatory courses. And as you know, here in California, one of the main metrics that's used to measure college and career readiness is the successful completion of the 15 A through G courses. And successful completion means that those courses were passed with a C- or better. So for this transcript analysis, we looked at that successful completion, but we also disaggregated by major student groups, by school, and by subject area. And in your board packet, both the attachments that were mailed to you ahead of time as well as what is available to you tonight in paper form is the report and the packet of transcript. It says transcript analysis reports. And so I'm going to just elevate a few of the key takeaways. There's way too much in this report for me to present on all of it tonight, but I will reference the figure number if you want to follow along and look at the specific data that is kind of the backup data to those key findings. All right, so we're going to start with figure 6, and this was just the overall looking at A through G eligibility for the cohort, and approximately 43% of the cohort students graduated A through G eligible, meaning that they had passed at least those 15 required courses with a C- or better. In figure 8, you will see that we also disaggregated by gender, income, and ethnicity, and we found that there were large gaps in this A through G completion. And of these 3 comparisons, the largest gap was by ethnicity. There was a 31 percentage point difference in A through G completion between white students and Latinx students in this cohort. And so in our conversations with district folks and lots of people that we spoke with, we really wanted to get to understand like what's happening there. Is this a lack of access? Is it a lack of success and support in those classes? And so we dug a little bit deeper into that question. And the data do indicate that the outcomes were attributable to both a lack of access and a lack of success, but the circumstances vary by student group and subject area. So I'm gonna dig a little bit deeper into that. I'm going to come back to that last slide there. So the subject areas, just starting with the success issue, the subject areas where there was the lowest pass rates were English and math, and this is not different from what we see in most districts that we've worked with on transcript analysis. But what we did notice and what we did see in the data were that 47% of the cohort students did not take the full sequence, the full 15 courses. So if we're defining access as being enrolled in those 15 required courses, 47% of the students did not have that access. Okay, so now looking at figures 18 as well as 20 to 22. This is an analysis of course access by major student group and by subject. Again, with access being defined as enrollment in the required number of A through G courses in that subject area. So when we look at where the access gaps were, math was the subject area with the lowest level of access for many student groups, including Latinx students, redesignated students, economically disadvantaged, and special education students. And I know we are allotting some time at the end for questions, but if there's something that you want to ask right as we go through, that's fine too. Okay. And when we look at figure 19, we see that English learners had low enrollment access across most subject areas, but most especially in English, math, lab science, and language other than English. And looking at figures 17 and 22, and I apologize that we are going through this quickly, but we just have a few more. For every student group except English learners and special education students, the largest gap between access and success was in English. And so if we wanted to boil it down to which subject area, was access the problem for, that was math. But which subject area was success for, that was English for most student groups. Figures 11A through 11G show something that we call an on-track, off-track analysis. And so this was taking that cohort from the class of 2018 and looking backwards at the end of 9th grade, what percentage of them were considered on track, what percent at the end of 10th grade, and so on. And so and that's disaggregated in your data by different student groups and by the schools, but overall, about half of the cohort, 55%, was on track for meeting A through G at the end of, not by the end of, but at the end of 9th grade, they were on track. And the general trend we saw in every student group was that number of being on track always was highest after 9th grade. It dropped a little bit in 10th, dropped more in 11th, and then rebounded a little bit in 12th grade, presumably due to some making up of courses, but it's never rebounded as high as it was in 9th grade. Yes.
So
All
that
right,
was
thank
actually
you.
one.
Trustee Gasson.
Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry. So one of my questions actually I had on this was, given an understanding of what we have here, what is typical? Like, what is a normal trend for any other school?
Mm-hmm.
Do they always start off high and go low, or do they increase? Can you give me a point of reference?
Right. That's a good question. The trend is typical. That is a trend that our analyst said is seen in many schools. I think if you start obviously with a higher percent after 9th grade that's already on track, then you end with a higher number at the end of 12th grade. But the general trend of the dip, and back up was not uncommon.
President Aguirre.
Trustee Cooper.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about that as well. That's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So when they come at the end of 9th grade, they're at 55 and they dip. And what's the number one factor for that? Why isn't that trend? Why isn't it an upward trend? Why doesn't that continue? Is it counseling? Is it? And I know you've got a ton of information here, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I think that's something that is still to be kind of unpacked through the planning. Some of the issues that we see in the data is that the lack of access to math classes. So if students are not making good progress in math through the 3 A through G required courses, which are Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, then they're not going to be considered on track. Or if they fail a semester and need to make it up, they're not going to be considered on track. So that's one of the issues that we would look at.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Math.
Yes, Trustee Myrick.
So I'm trying to make some sense of this. I'm looking at your figure 19, and it's called A through G access and passing rates English learners.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at the math, which is where you took your focus. And I picked this one because under the math, the column on the left appears to be attempts, and the column on the right appears to be A through G eligible. I'm not sure what those mean.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. So on those graphs that show the blue is percent.
It's not blue on mine, it's black and white.
Oh,
on
black
mine.
and white, okay. So the part that says percent attempted, which would be the one on the left, that means that the students were enrolled in the full required A through G courses for that subject area.
Okay, so for that to be true, for example, in math, that means 26% of English learners, I'm reading this page.
Yes.
26% of English learners were enrolled. Is that what it's saying?
That's right.
Only 26%.
Only
Of
26%.
that population were even in the classroom to be able to complete A to G. And then the number on the right, the 21%, which is also in, it says A to G eligible. What does that column mean?
Yeah, so that percentage refers to the percentage of students that successfully passed those 3 classes.
So the column on the right is always going to be shorter than the column on the left because you can't pass it if you don't attempt it, right?
Right. I mean, it could ideally be the same, but yes, it wouldn't be higher.
Okay. So I'm just trying to make sure I understand the math.
Yep, thank you.
So in this, and I picked the page where they were the shortest columns. So our English language learners aren't even being enrolled in the necessary math classes to get to college.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Really?
All right. Any other questions? Okay, so I just, a couple more slides here really quick. So the analysis also looked at advanced placement enrollment for this cohort and examined the proportionality of the 20% English learner, then proportionally enrollment would be 20%. That would be proportional enrollment. So in this case, this is figure 4 that shows the proportionality. So in this case, those groups that were most underrepresented in advanced placement classes were male students, English learners, Latinx students, economically disadvantaged students, and students in special education. Those were the groups that had the lowest or most disproportionality in their enrollment. Oops, I turned it off.
So
There we go.
Trustee Mulrick.
Back to my question. So this says only 26% of our Latino students even attempted to take an A through G math curriculum. So compared to the rest of the state, this is Novato. So are we high or low? Should I go, oh my God, the rest of the world's moving along and we're stuck in this ditch? Or where are we?
Yeah, that's a good question. And unfortunately, we don't have this level of data on a statewide level. We do know all we know that's reported publicly is the percent of English learners that graduate having met the full A through G course sequence. And that is about 10% statewide. And Novato, in this cohort, it was 0% that met the full 15 courses. So that's one data point that we have. And then the report gives some potential recommendations and resources to add to access.
Excuse me, you said 0% of the Novato students met A through G requirements?
English learners.
Oh, of English learners. Okay, okay. So
Yes.
0% of English learners in Novato met the A through G requirements by the time they walked across the stage for high school graduation.
Yes, in the class of 2018 cohort.
0%. None of those kids.
Correct.
Okay, well, I think we have something to talk about, don't we?
Yes. All right, and then the last slide I wanted to point out here was that the CTE courses, we also looked at that enrollment because we know that CTE courses provide a good rigorous curriculum and opportunity for students to be college and career ready. And they're often A through G approved courses as well. And when we looked at the class of 2018, about a third of the students took a CTE course, and only about 3% had completed a pathway. But we know from conversations with district personnel that there have been CTE courses added over the years, and so we would predict that this number would hopefully increase with subsequent cohorts. All right, so now I'm going to transition to Sarah, who's going to share just a little bit of data from the parent survey as it relates to parents' understanding of the A through G course requirements, as well as just a little bit of our recommendations, but there's much more to read in the report. So thank you.
Trustee Gasson?
Yeah, it's actually for you. So since you're going to be talking about the survey results, one of the things, and it's actually on the first slide, so I feel like this is a good there, but a good opening since we're talking about this. When I was going through, I actually read all of the comments and all of the results and everything. One of the things I noticed, and I'm curious, or actually maybe I preempted you. Are you going to explain how you did the survey?
Yes.
Okay, maybe I'll wait. Because I just realized, well, because it struck me, there's a lot of, like, Novato High School was not represented, but then conversely, and then there's the teachers too. There was like larger populations that got picked up and not the others. So I apologize. I'll let you go.
No problem. We welcome all questions at any time. It's fine. Thank you for engaging with it. So in addition to the transcript analysis, another piece of the research that we do is we do focus groups, which are in person at all 3 high schools, and then we also do surveys. And the surveys, we ask the school administrators to send those out in the community, both to parents and to school staff and to students. And so, as you indicated on that earlier slide, we had 1,088 students complete the survey, 234 parents, and 68 school staff complete the survey. It took all of 15 minutes. It was provided both in Spanish and in English. And so the next slide, if I could see if I can do this. From the parent survey, and this is not all of the information, this is just a couple teaser highlights. 63% of parents said they are aware of the differences between the courses that are required to graduate from high school and the courses that students need to apply to a 4-year college. This is really important because in many communities, we have actually found that parents were not informed at all and were shocked when their students graduated and were not eligible to apply to the CSU and UCs. So you're at 63% just of the folks who took the time to complete the survey. So it's just a sample. 21% of parents agreed that they receive regular updates from their school about their students' progress towards college and or career goals or A through G completion. So that might be something to dig a little bit deeper in terms of what are the processes that the schools are using in order to keep parents informed. Does it come out on progress reports, report cards, just when kids get transcripts junior year? Like, what is the way that information gets shared out? So our recommendation is to adopt and implement graduation and course placement policies that reflect the commitment to provide every student with the courses and support they need to graduate college and career ready. And to establish monitoring systems that routinely notify counselors, teachers, students, and parents of students' progress towards meeting A through G and CTE pathway requirements, and develop clear plans for effective interventions when students fall off track, because we know that's going to happen. That is the reality. Yep. And so we have to be prepared for what are going to be the opportunities during the school day, after the school day, on weekends, during the summer, to help kids get back on track. Okay, so thinking about that in a very thorough way. Mm-hmm. Provide meaningful access to A through G courses by offering course sections with the intentional use of CDI strategies, instructional strategies that are really aimed at increasing English learners' access to rigorous content and skills. We have seen in other districts, such as LA Unified School District, where they got a lot of their courses specifically for English language learners to be A through G approved using CDI coursework, and that's something we definitely recommend. And now I'm going to pass the baton on to Mayra Lara. Yes, question. Thank you.
Sorry, I still didn't get my question, and I don't know if it's for you or whomever did this, but so what I have here is 72% of San Marin High School students responded out of the students. That's really high, so we've got that weight. And then for staff, San Marin High School is actually, if I'm reading this correctly, I'm just wondering if there's something wrong. It's not showing any, it shows Marin Oaks, Nova, and then Novato. The staff one. And I'm just wondering, Novato EEA staff survey. I'm just wondering, it's just, like, there's no consistent, there's like a heavy weighted here, and why is Novato just, is that Novato High, or is it combination, or I presumed it was Novato High.
So I'm not sure what she's referring to because I don't actually have
There are the survey responses.
Right, just the different percentages. So those numbers refer to, of the people who responded, what school they were from. And so it wasn't completely proportional because it was dependent upon how the surveys were passed on, how they were administered at the different sites. And for parents, it was, obviously an optional survey. And so there was, some elements that were outside the control of, our control, and it was dependent on who chose to participate.
And I understand that, and I appreciate it. Actually, it was all interesting. I mean, I literally read 1,200 comments and stuff.
A lot of comments, yeah.
So I guess my thought is that I just didn't understand. It was almost like something got missed to have, I understand it's, it's optional, and reading some of the comments and stuff, it was funny because I knew one of the things you had to put something in there. It was one of those required fields that you had to type in something, but that's why I thought maybe I misunderstood somewhere. If I've only got representation from the which I think is important, especially when you've got San Marin High is heavily weighted on the student input of what's going on, and then the staff is, again, I just thought maybe I missed that San Marin High is not here at all.
Right. So when we were looking at what elevated to us as a key finding, we looked for things to be triangulated. So we wouldn't just use a survey response or just a focus group. We were looking at findings that were coming from more than one source, and that doesn't completely address the concern that ideally we would want to have completely representational participation in the survey, but just the lack of representation, there were other ways for us to hear the voices of those groups.
All right. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So Sarah and Rachel described phase 1 of the equity audit process, which is both the quantitative and qualitative research portion of our work. And I'm going to speak a bit about phase 2, which is the blueprint for equity action planning. And I'm going to talk through some items that are not on the slide that you see here, and then I will discuss the items that are on the slide. So first, over the summer, we will meet with district leaders who are going to plan the logistics of the blueprint planning process. Part of this is because we want to ensure that the process fits within the existing initiatives and the existing timelines of the school district. So we want to be very clear and transparent about that, and we want to make sure that it does align with what the district is doing, and there isn't any misalignment with the work of the blueprint planning process. In terms of the structure of the blueprint planning process itself, it will consist of 2 committees. The first committee is the working committee, and this is the committee that is going to actively work to create the plan that is going to become the Blueprint for Equity Action Plan. It'll be comprised of district administrators, or rather we recommend that it be comprised of district administrators, school site administrators, counselors, teachers, and together we will help facilitate, the Education Trust West will help facilitate the creation of the plan. The second committee is the steering committee, and we recommend that it be comprised of board members, district leadership, community partners. This could include community-based organizations and institutions of higher education as well, parents, students, elementary and middle school leaders. And those will be the 2 committees that will be actively involved. Again, the working committee will be creating the plan, and the steering committee will provide input and recommendations and continue to guide the plan as it is being created. And so in terms of the process itself, we recognize that they're in the report that you all have in front of you and that you all have seen. We, as the Education Trust West, offer a number of recommendations, but we also recognize that these are recommendations and that the expertise lives within the school district, because it is the folks in the school district that have worked with the community and the young people who are enrolled in schools. So along with the working committee, we will review the report. We will review both the findings and the recommendations at length, and we will also help facilitate a process where folks of the working committee will prioritize action items. We recognize also that with the help of the National Equity Project, there is a strong foundation about issues of equity within the district, and we will work to utilize some of those tools and some of that pre-existing knowledge to continue the work that is projected on the screen, which is essentially to really identify and participate in a root cause analysis of why the outcomes exist and create a plan to try to address some of those root causes that have created the outcomes that you see present in the data. Again, it'll be co-facilitated with the district. It'll be integrated within district initiatives, including the LCAP process. As you all saw with the data, it is data-driven, both quantitative and qualitative data. We will participate in extensive discussions and extensive reflections, identify the actions needed to address the root causes of the inequities that you see present in data. And there will be, with this process, because it is co-facilitated and it is within the community of Novato Unified, we hope that there is broad ownership of the plan. And that is our presentation today, and we will open it for questions.
Thank you very much. Superintendent Hogaboom.
So just a couple last things. I'd also, Ed Trust West also helped us with our equity convening. So last Thursday, we had our equity teams from every school attend that, and that basically was a quick, you can see it's a pretty dense report that's going to take us a long time to look through that. But really appreciate you guys helping to facilitate that. So again, we had every school has an equity team. They presented the report. We honed in on two areas. One was culturally proficient teaching and what's been done specifically with that. And the second one was what schools are doing to create that culture of inclusion. So, and then each school basically came up with a list of what they've done this year and what their next steps are next year and what the help they need from the district is. So appreciate you guys helping to facilitate that as we get this work out here. It's really thick. So as Rachel and her group have said, really this is the data. Some of this we already had because we've done some transcript analysis. Data matters is going to be a huge assist to us. So Amy and Jen and everybody are already looking at that, but as we're trying to keep students and parents updated on where they are, now we have something with those footsteps and stuff that you guys saw that shows where our students are. But obviously we have a lot of work to do, and this will help pinpoint exactly where that is. And finally, I would just say that, you know, basically Ed Services is pretty much aware of a lot of this information. A lot of it you're going to be hearing about the LCAP coming up. So we've tried to blend a lot of that in there. But to me, this is the basis of a lot of the work that we need to do next year. And finally, just one last shout out to Marin Promise. Ann Matheson, you can wave from Marin Promise, Executive Director. They helped to pay for this and make this whole thing happen. So most of the districts, the high school districts in the county are going ahead with this. So we'll be comparing notes with each other as well, because this is great foundational work, and we appreciate all your time and effort. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. We do have a request to address the board, and the name is Tracy Larnier and Stephanie Reyes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephanie Reyes. I'm a College Access Fellow for 10,000 Degrees. I am also a graduate of Novato High School. So from Novato High School, I became a student of the 10,000 Degrees College Success Program. From there, my 10,000 Degrees advisor helped me start my college education at the Santa Rosa Junior College, where I transferred to UC Davis, and I just graduated there last spring. So thank you. So I'm really happy to be back in my community working with 10,000 Degrees and helping a new generation of students, many who are first generation, many who are low income, learn about their resources for how to get to college. So tonight I'm here because I'd like to show my support for other groups such as the Ed Trust West, who works to provide resources for students throughout the Novato Unified School District. For example, they talk about the A through G requirements, how maybe not every student is reached to complete those requirements. So yes, throughout my work with my students, I've seen that while you might present the A through G requirements as freshmen, they might need that extra support, maybe a fellow who they see weekly, and to help them like understand why it's important and how we can get to complete those requirements so that college can be more accessible.
Thank you, and I'm Tracy here with Stephanie. Just want to reiterate, as 10,000 Degrees, for all our fellows working in the schools, that the type of work that Ed Trust West and the district are doing is so important to really have systemic change so that students like Stephanie aren't sitting next to me nodding when we're hearing the findings. So we look forward to working with the district moving forward in support of this work. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Tracy and Stephanie. Okay, I'm going to move us to, okay, I guess not. Okay, 2 more questions and then we have to move to the next item. I just want to remind us that we can always contact our, our speakers, and we have more questions, especially during staff report. Go ahead. So, Trustee Cooper.
So, thank you very much, all involved, Marin Promise, Ed Trust West. I think this is a lot of great information. Just so I understand the timeline. So, phase 2, you're going to come back. Essentially, we're going to reconvene in January 2020, right? I mean, we're going to be, yeah, but that'll be the culmination of all your work. And because on your audit, you have a lot of great recommendations. So when you come back next year, they're going to be action items. So you're going to take those recommendations to the next level and say, boom, 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 here's what we recommend you do. Steps.
Yes, so just like we've got an action plan for multiple tiered systems of support, proficiency-based education, we'll present a system-wide action plan that's multiple years that's focused on keeping every door open.
Okay, good.
All right.
Excellent.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Carter.
I'll be really
And
quick.
One more, okay, go ahead, Trustee Mack. And then Trustee Gasson, and then we have to move on.
Okay, yeah, just really quick. Just want to say I really appreciate the structure that's been placed around all this. I know we've been doing parts and pieces of it and doing a great job, but it's really great to see it all come together. I really appreciate the report doing that. It's a major eye-opener, and also the structure that we have going forward. It's fantastic, and I would love to be part of the steering committee. I really want to see this succeed.
Trustee Gasson.
So just touching a little bit on what Trustee Cooper just said. One of the things that resonated me, and it was regarding the timeline. I noticed some, the timeline's kind of projecting forward. There's some things that I think, and I'd love to talk to you about, that we could maybe do for next year. One of the big things that came out of this report was something that I've been feeling and hearing a lot about, and it has to do with the ARIES reporting and family notification. And so I'm hopeful that that is something that we can implement and change sooner, getting more regular use by the teachers on that, getting information out to the parents so they understand that they can get reports sent to them. Also, as it relates to the fact that if we're pulling information from Data Matters, there needs to be that link in getting the practice and use by everyone involved so that that information is available there. The other thing I noticed in terms of the comment I made earlier about the 9th grade, the 56% of students being on track, I think when we're looking at all this, I would love to see it, how we can, even though this is focused on high school level, I think that that is an indicator that there's something going on in the middle schools too. And like I said, I think one of the things that I've experienced myself is not knowing when my child is not doing well. And there are the segment of parents who believe that it's up to them, they need to handle it, but there's, we're seeing the results of letting them handle it and not getting on top of it sooner. So that's another thing. And the final thing I want to add is, and I'll meet up with Yancey, I don't know if he's here, but when we're looking at the bond funds, there's some things that came through the report and indirectly about safety and security for the kids that I think feeds into whether they're doing well or not, and that those things should be identified so we can plan for that piece. So those are things I think we can do now rather than later as we're structuring, or thinking forward for the next year. So thank you for letting me speak.
Okay, thank you very much. That was important. All right, we lost our student trustees.
I just want to close out by saying that, I came to you in October and I said that A through G rate is something that happened 4 years ago. And as soon as we started realizing that, we started mobilizing around that. There's been a consortium of individuals that are already attacking that freshman failure rate. I don't want to get too optimistic, but we will come back with a report on those efforts in the next month or so once those final grades are in. But there's not an ounce of complacency around this issue, and the work of Ed Trust West and our Marin partners really helps us know where and how we can find those little trim tabs to impact this issue.
Right.
So we're grateful to them. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Carter, and we'll contact you if we have any more questions. All right, next we're going to 13B, College and Career Readiness Update, and that'll be with Jen Larson, Director of Instruction.
Good evening. I actually have a team with me tonight, and I want to, we're going to do something a little bit new, so I want to prepare you for a little bit of a tech trial here. We're going to do the best that we can. With me tonight, I have Jen Marsh Russell, who is not only one of our amazing CCR teachers, College and Career Readiness teachers, but we've actually asked her to be the lead teacher in the next year so that she can actually provide some support and be in classrooms a little bit more to support our teachers who are moving in and out of CCR. And then we also have one of our wonderful students. This is, I'm going to hopefully say your name right, Xavier Esperer. Somewhere close? Okay, thank you. Come on over. All right, so we are going to do this a little bit live, but before we start looking at the portfolios and what it is that's actually happening and the changes that are happening in CCR, I wanted to give you just a little bit of an overview. First, I want to thank our team over here who has done such great work on our equity audit. It is so wonderful to have data to lend to what we already have been seeing, but in much smaller doses. So to be able to have something concrete, not just anecdotal, to provide some urgency, but also some guidance as to the best ways to move forward has been really helpful. One of those has been CCR. So 3 years ago, we started the College and Career Readiness course. It's been in action for 2 years now. We've learned a lot over those 2 years. CCR is a semester-long course. It is not only a UC-approved G course, but it is also a college course, which means that all of our freshmen are enrolled in College of Marin. All students who receive a B- or above receive 3 college credits through College of Marin. Any students who receive a C or lower still get high school credit, but don't have a transcript from College of Marin. And our primary purpose in that is we don't want students to have a transcript from college and their first college grade be a C. They can always retake it if they want those college credits. And obviously, if they are unable to pass the class their first time, then they would be retaking because it is now a high school graduation requirement. At this point, we have about a 96% success rate. Almost all of our students pass it and pass it well. Of that 96%, approximately 70% do earn college credit, which is a high percentage for our college courses. In addition to being a wonderful class, really the purpose of developing that is to have a foundation and a transition for our students coming from middle to high school. There's a significant change that happens, and a lot of that has to do with understanding how grades work, how credits work, and how they need to, what they need to accomplish in order to meet their goals, whether that is college, whether that is career, and we can't do that unless we start from the 9th grade. We've started and we have the 1 semester course. This challenge that we've faced in the last 2 years is not having a place for the modules to follow up in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. That is our primary focus for next year. There are 2 significant changes that you'll see in the program. The first is going to be a new portfolio program. We've been working with College of Marin. we found that the outcomes with the current portfolio, which we'll show you parts of tonight, are less dynamic and supportive of student success. It's very vague, it's very broad, and it's not very easy for the students to use it as a tool. We really want this to be a hands-on tool. So we will be using a new portfolio next year that Jen and myself are working on, and also training the teachers. In addition, we will be looking at how to offer those modules. We're looking at the office hours that are going to be implemented at the high schools as an opportunity, and we just had a brilliant idea. We're planning to use the expertise of our counselors and our CCR teachers, but we now have our fellows to join to that list of people who can come back and be a resource and help us offer those courses throughout the next 3 years to ensure that there's actually follow-up happening, so that those 4-year plans aren't just stuck in a box in a portfolio somewhere and not actually used. I said there were 2, but I feel like there's a 2.1, which is, in addition, we've changed from the 10-year plan to the 4-year plan. So we're going to be using the 4-year plan in Aries, which means that this is how kids will now be scheduling their courses, which then makes it a workable tool that the students will need to be accessing and parents will need to be accessing, hopefully improving parent communication, student communication. All right, with that, I'm going to hand this over to Xavier, and we're going to show his portfolio. This is an example of what the portfolios look like today, and then after that, we'll show you a glimpse of what we're looking at for next year.
Hi, my name is Xavier Spur. I'm in 10th grade. Yeah, I took CCR last year in the fall semester with Miss Russell.
Okay. Do you want to tell us what we're seeing here? And then
All right,
tell me where
so
to go?
here's my home screen. It really doesn't have that much on because in the first semester, we were told to just put a bio and we weren't really explained what to write on it, so no one really did that. And then we were told to just make an example for each class grade. So we have my freshman year, sophomore year, junior, senior, and then extracurricular activities. So if I go to my freshman year, it has all of my classes that I took freshman year. So here, let's go to Spanish 2. When you click on it, I have some examples of some of the projects that I did in that class. And like I did about Colombia, and then I did another one about salsa. And then we have different ones for English. It was a lot easier to do these for English because English was a lot more integrated with the CCR and with our portfolios and with the 6 Cs. So it was a lot easier to add stuff from English into my portfolio. Here I have like my freshman research paper. And then I have a project that I did in the beginning of the year. We had to do a radio story in that class. And all of these had parts that had to do with each of our 6 Cs. Like this one was communication because we had to make a radio story. And then this one was cultural competence because we had to do one about acceptance, and we made ours about like racism and acceptance and xenophobia. Then we have biology. Biology, since it was a lot harder to do it for biology because it's not so much projects and a lot more labs, so you kind of just have the lab reports. So I had those on here.
That's the snap sign when you go on. Try to relaunch it or
Refresh it.
All right, any questions, Trustee Gassam?
So I noticed on some of your projects that there's multiple people. So do you each have that on each of your own portfolios?
Well, we each all work on the same document, and then at the end of it, you can all click make a copy of it, and then that's the one that you can add to your portfolio.
Good question.
Oh, CCR, yeah. In CCR, here I have my 10-year plan. It has a summary of that, and it talks about what I'm training for my college, and then it talks about just a whole summary of basically what we did in the entire course. Then it has a resume that we all made. That was part of the class. It was to make a resume. And it has like stuff that I could, and I actually used this to get my first job. Thank you. And then in the beginning of the year, we took this thing called the Indigo Survey, which taught us a lot about ourselves, actually. It taught us about our motivators, our values to a team, and it just gave us a lot of information about ourselves that we didn't even know. How do I go between those? It talks about like my style, and it gives me like a whole paragraph about myself that I think is really accurate. It says that I was goal-oriented and I believe in harnessing people to help me achieve my goals, which I think a lot of people would use to describe me. And then it gave me my my skills, which were like management, persuasion, negotiation, but then it also gives you the lower ones, which are like flexibility, time management, decision-making, futuristic thinking. So I think it was good that it showed you not just the things that you're good at, but also the things that you can work on. So I think that was really good about this survey. And then it showed you this chart, which shows the your DISC score. It shows for your each bar shows for dominance, influencing, steadiness, and compliance. And then it gives you yours somewhere. Is it the first page?
Trustee Millerick.
Does it ask for what your future goals are? I mean, this is an assessment of a tool on where you stand right now. Do you have a plan for where you want to be in 10 years, and did you put it in here?
Yes. In the course, you have to figure out sort of a plan of what you did, and I wasn't entirely sure about what I wanted to do. I thought maybe be a lawyer, maybe do something else. So I kind of just chose that, and I stuck with it, because I think that even if I do consider changing it, which I probably will, if I choose a achievable and kind of high up there goal, then even if I do change my mind, it will still keep open doors for me to do whatever else I want to change my mind to do.
So at this point, your long range target is, I'm going to be a lawyer, and you're driving down that road, and maybe pretty soon you'll take a side trip, but right now, that's the road.
Yes.
10 years from now, you think? Okay.
Trustee Mack.
If I could have Jen just talk, or both Jens. It doesn't matter. We've been through a bit of an evolution here. Okay, yeah, so that's what I'm seeing. So can you just talk us through, because obviously, you know, we were heavy into get focused, stay focused in year one. And would I be correct to say we've moved away from them? We're kind of doing our own thing now?
This is a perfect segue.
Okay.
So what you're looking at in the question you just asked about his 10-year plan is in this single document right here. And so this follows the curriculum of the Get Focused, Stay Focused. We aren't changing the curriculum. What we're doing is we're trying to change the tool so that the projects and the work to get to those goals are more hands-on and more substantial and supportive of our students. What we found with this, and I can let both, I think it'd be good for Jen to talk a little bit about her response to this tool. I think it was a wonderful introduction for our staff and our students to get to know the curriculum and understand it. But I feel like at this point we're ready, and we feel like there's a need for something more robust. So I'm going to give her just a moment, and then while she's doing that, I'll boot up the next portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, what we found is that a lot of it wasn't really relevant to our kids. It would ask them, what are your career and educational goals when you're 80? I don't even know what I'm going to be doing when I'm 80. I don't know how a 14 or 15-year-old
I hope I'm
student.
doing something.
Exactly, absolutely. But do you know what educationally you want to be doing? And so we found that a lot of the documents that we were getting back from kids, they were just kind of coming up with answers that would check the box that they did it and wasn't meaningful. Would you say the same?
Yeah. And that's kind of what I heard.
Right. And so we looked at kind of different models. Different colleges actually have where you go and your planner, your one example is the Cal Poly planner, it's a live document that you update every year. It kind of informs their master schedule of what classes you want to take, and you update it based on what you pass, what you take, when you can get into the class. And so using something that was more accessible to them, that they could have some impact on now, not when they're 80, 70, or 60, felt a little bit more meaningful to them. There were also some documents or some activities in there that had them coming up with 3 careers, which is great, and looking at every educational level for the career, and it wasn't really meaningful for them. You had to say what you could do. If you wanted to be a lawyer, you had to say what you could do in high school without any education, what you could do with a AA, what you could do with a certificate, what you could do with a bachelor's, all the way up to the PhD. And the kids could not really negotiate that very well for one career. And so it just wasn't meaningful for them. So we really we liked the topics, who am I, what do I want, and how do I get there? So we really kept those as the components, and many of the activities. Oh, it also had them just really in kind of an online platform and workbook that was really boring.
Right.
And so teachers didn't feel like there was a whole lot of autonomy to be able to kind of pick and choose what they wanted to do with it that would make it meaningful, and the aspects that they liked and wanted to teach and were passionate about. And so it became kind of the workbook and the online platform was kind of a babysitter.
Right. Yep.
And it was really just boring and meaningful.
I kind of heard as much
Yeah.
from.
So we, this year, just decided, why do we stay with a program that's not working for our kids? It wasn't giving us the tool at the end that seemed meaningful, that would be something they would want to come back and revisit. So that's kind of where we went from there. And we kept the 3 main themes, kept a lot of the activities. I know that some of the really great ones are the budgeting tools. Xavier's going to spend $2,000 a day on his suits. He's budgeted for that.
That's good.
He wants his Armani suits for his lawyer career. But, you know, kids get to play with that, and they get to play with buying houses and doing house hunters and vacation projects where they plan vacations for 4, if that's what the teacher really wants to do. So there's some key parts that are going to feed into our graduate portfolio, and this, which what you saw is his digital portfolio that will then help him do his senior defense senior year with his 6 Cs. So what he's actually doing is each year he's taking each of his classes and he's putting in evidence that will then be used as his senior defense when he goes to defend how he learned the 6 Cs through his education.
Got it. And is it varying much for the 3 different cohorts? You know, year 1s, year 2s, year 3s, or are you just kind of taking the year 1s and adjusting what they had a plan going forward, now it's changed, so now they're kind of doing the same as everybody else, or?
So one of the things we found is that teachers do and focus differently on different things. And so some kids, as we are talking about the digital portfolio and loading it up, they don't know what it is, even though they've had CCR. So it depends on the focus in the particular classes, so that'll be helpful next year to get in and really focus with each of the teachers to do that. And I think this is the first week sophomore, at the end of his sophomore year, that now in all of the history classes, the history teachers are asking the sophomores to go back and revisit, because after the AP tests, they can get in there and do that. And so all of the sophomore history classes have been working on it this week. Were you guys?
No, we start Thursday and Friday.
Oh, you're going to start Thursday and Friday. And actually, it's kind of funny because I called Jason Searle and I said, I need a really good portfolio of one of your kids. And he said, oh, I've got the perfect kid. Ask Xavier. And I said, no, I already talked to him last night. He's already coming. I need another one. He says, no, Xavier's got the best one. So
there you go.
He's well known with having the best one. He really got into it, and he did it. So you have the gamut of kids that also took different liberties with it.
And you touched on the teacher situation too, which I think that it takes a certain type of teacher to do this, which I
Trustee
think we
Millerick.
found it the hard way.
Okay,
Go ahead.
thank you. Is this for every student?
Yes.
So if your parents, when you were born, are putting money away so you can go to Brown or wherever you're going to go, you still get to go through this exercise, and you might come up to a different plan than mom or dad had.
Absolutely. So just so you can see the difference between those two, the first one you are seeing his entire 6Cs portfolio, which includes CCR. What we've done is instead of the 10-year plan online, they're going to be using, this is a CCR portfolio or a website that the teacher will then duplicate, and each kid can then modify themselves. What Jen has done is she's included the best of the best projects that we know have happened in classrooms across the district into each one of these so that teachers have kind of a resource. If they choose to do something different or tweak it, that's fine, but this is a place to house all of the units that there needs to be evidence of, and then also example projects that may be. So this is something every student will replicate and use their own evidence for.
And so you have a NUSD-owned online database that stores all this information, so it's protected and backed up, and it survives over multiple years. And does the student walk away with that portfolio at graduation?
Absolutely. That goes hand in hand with their email addresses. So however we determine how those email addresses stay with them, this stays with those addresses as well. So we would either...
This is a question for Xavier. I said, okay, so how useful is this process where sort of annually you have to reassess I'm going to be an attorney with an Armani suit and you know, I mean, some Armani suit attorneys go to jail too, so how's that, you know... Have you decided what your clientele is? Maybe that's the right question.
I think really coming back to the portfolio and the 10-year plan really makes me think about, is this actually something that I want to do? And what's the next step to help me get there? So I think that, like this year, I've been thinking, what are the classes that I'm going to take next year? What am I going to be doing? What are my electives? What are my extracurriculars? So that I can be able to achieve this, because still this is the only plan that I have at the moment. And until I have another one, a better one, or a different one,
Yeah.
I'm going to stick with it.
Yeah. So I've had conversations with students where they were going to be an aircraft mechanic, but because they had the conversation that you're having now, said, well, gee, if I spend a little more time, maybe instead of fixing the airplane, I can actually design the airplane. And if I apply, I still like airplanes, I like that path, but I could either be the guy fueling the airplane, the guy fixing the airplane, the guy designing the airplane, or, you know, or an astronaut. I can make those choices based on my academics. Have you, in that attorney world, have you thought about maybe you're going to be a clerk to a Supreme Court justice, or?
Yeah, that was one part of the 10-year plan part, whereas you go on the different sort of steps to the actual like final job that you want. So it was like clerk, I forget exactly which ones I picked, but it was just everything leading up to a full attorney, and then I think it even went higher. And then there was like, you had to do them for different jobs too, so you could also see the different possible careers that you could choose. So like I know one of my friends did doctor, and it went from like doctor to like personal, like even at the bottom it was like personal trainer. So it shows you just a big range of things that you
Mortician is in there too, probably.
So,
thanks. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, back where you're going to be in 80 years.
Thank you very much.
Make sure somebody's ready for me.
I just wanted to say, I've known Javier Xavier for many years, and you're going to do wonderful. Yeah, he does a lot of community service work, and he's also being modest. So, thank you very much. Thank you. All right. Next, we're going to go to staff report. We're doing staff report, restorative justice. And we will have, again, Dr. Amy Carter present.
Great. So as you all know, we are in an era of school discipline reform. And in 2011, the Department of Education, the Departments of Justice issued a supportive school discipline initiative. And this was really sort of the federal government pushing on the inequities that we see with a lot of our disciplinary practices, particularly exclusionary discipline, which is suspension and expulsion. They ran a big study that identified that these practices, these exclusionary practices, unfairly impact minorities, and students with disabilities are also impacted disproportionately. So once the federal government kind of made that big push, the states followed, and we saw in 2015 AB 420 come out, which really took willful defiance off the table for discipline. This national study found that 43% of the suspensions that were occurring were for willful defiance, and they felt like that was some racially charged language, and they have taken that out. That's no longer something that we suspend or even expel for. So that's really also been manifest in our California dashboard, where we do see the suspension rate. You'll recall from my presentation a few weeks ago that Novato School District, we did end up in differentiated assistance because for 2 years in a row, we were disproportionately suspending African American students. So this is something that we're working on as a system, really trying to change mindsets and change practices. We do know, because research tells us, that even one suspension doubles the possibility that a child will not graduate. One suspension. Even one suspension triples the odds that a student will end up in the juvenile justice system. So those are things that we're really mindful of, and that's led to a lot of our work with our restorative justice practices. So, Evie, I'm going to let you take it from there.
Good evening. Nice to see everyone this evening. So we're gonna, I know we're running long here, so we'll try and speed it up a little bit. So as you know, this year NUSD took over restorative justice from the YMCA, and I really have to thank Chris for his patience working with CSEA to get those restorative justice specialist positions approved, and it took a little longer than we thought, so we weren't able to get restorative specialists in place until November. And then we right away began peer court at San Marin, Novato High's San Jose and Sinaloa schools. And I would like to express my appreciation and thankfulness to all of the students who had previously been involved with peer courts and who kept emailing me, and we kept in contact saying, you know, we're making progress, and they all volunteered their time, and their commitment to restorative justice year after year has really made a deep impact on the success of the program. So I thank the students for their patience through that. So one of our restorative justice specialists is Tanya Ruano, who is sorry she will not be here this evening, but you all should have a letter from her in your packets. She has a unique role in that she, in addition to being campus supervisor at San Marin, also runs the San Marin peer courts and the restorative justice course at Marin Oaks, which is something that she did last year with the YMCA as well. So we were really happy to be able to bring her on board right away this year. And then we hired David Marinoff to provide restorative justice services at San Jose, Sinaloa, and Novato High School. Unfortunately, he has left the district, but we look forward to working with Human Resources to find some really strong candidates for next year. In collaboration with the restorative justice specialists this year, and the students, we have finalized an NUSD peer court manual that contains all of the necessary forms and a student-approved facilitator script. There's been a lot of question with that over the years, and I think we finally have a good one with a lot of student input. I also worked with administrators and IT to identify and create codes in areas so we can track the restorative justice interventions in alignment with the MTSS structure. And that also increases the ability to enter restorative plans in a way that administrators can quickly get status on those for students as well. So we're really excited that that's moving forward. We've done sort of a soft rollout of that this year, and we'll be full bore in the fall with that. So our peer court numbers this year, San Jose, 30 students. Really, will, in interest of time, we'll just sort of go with the totals. So 197 students have been referred to restorative justice. 140 of those diverted suspensions, and 57 were referrals for non-suspendable offenses. A lot of those are interpersonal conflicts that would involve restorative circles and those aspects. So looking ahead, the Peer Corps program will continue for the 1920 school year, again with the Haas Family Foundation grant. We are also expanding restorative practices to all of the schools, including the charter, through Seeds out of Berkeley, and they will be providing teachers and other staff with restorative practices, particularly with community building circles and restorative circles. A lot of those dates we have secured already for the fall. And then we are going to also have the trauma-informed training and MCOE with a generous grant from, again, Haas and MCF. Through the P3 work, they will be having a trauma-informed training for there. And then through the Healthy Novato Haas grant, we are having a national provider come in to provide training for secondary teachers and staff. So the combination of the trauma-informed and the restorative practices work really well together. It shifts the focus from punishment to a learning opportunity. It allows students to make amends for the harm that they have caused while learning appropriate replacement behaviors, especially with interpersonal conflicts. Providing staff with trauma-informed and restorative practices training and coaching next year should make a deep impact on the capacity to increase student connectedness and decrease suspensions. At this time, I would also like to express my deep appreciation for the Peter E. Haas Jr. Family Fund for their continued generous support of NUSD and the Novato community. And we look forward to continuing the partnership into next year. Any questions?
Okay, Trustee Miller and then Trustee Gasson.
So I just want you to repeat, I think, what I heard. The program, we heard a lot about it, all the good things and how it works. But the very first thing you led with is if a student is, and I'm quoting you, and you're going to correct me, if a student is suspended, the probability that they will not, the probability they will not finish high school doubled. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Well, the print's too little from over here, so if I turn around and read it on here.
No, I meant Amy said
it. Amy said it.
Amy said it. Yeah.
And is that the right statistic? One suspension and the probability that you will not complete high school doubles.
It's startling.
And yes, well, it's more than startling. And Amy, you said there was a second fact that you mentioned, and I didn't capture it in my mind.
So the second point, and I'll shoot you the article about this, is that another national finding was that one suspension triples the likelihood that a child will end up in the juvenile justice system. A lot of the thoughts behind that is that you're taking a child and you're excluding them from your community. You're telling that child they're different or there's something wrong with them. And Trauma Informed shifts that lens and says, instead of what's wrong with you, it's what happened to you and how can we help you heal and be part of the community. And that's a lot of Phoebe's work. Phoebe's got another couple slides to share with you as well.
Yeah, so I have friends that we used to go when my friends were in juvenile hall a lot, and that's the population. I mean, they sort of took a different path through life, but it never occurred to me that the fork in the road could have been impacted by school action at the time, because they clearly. I mean, different friends have taken different paths, and some of them aren't with us today.
Correct.
Oh, I'd love to have this conversation. That's very powerful.
Could be a very long conversation.
Okay, Trustee Gesson?
So I didn't have an opportunity to see this before. I just found it. So because I was going to say I love Phoebe, so I'm glad
Phoebe's
she's going to
coming
come
up.
up. And so that was my first thought. I've had experience.
Everyone loves Phoebe.
Well, and my daughter's worked with her as one of the restorative justice circles in 5th grade. But my other two questions, one was small, one was a request. The Pure Court Manual, if there's a way that we can see what that is, that would be great.
Yep. I figured that would be, somebody would want that.
And I apologize if you gave it to somewhere. Already. I just didn't see some of the stuff on my desk or in front of. The comment too about seeds, the funding, it wasn't specific. I know there's been a line kind of between the middle school and high school. Is that also inclusive of elementary, or is elementary not in that?
For seeds, that funding is coming directly through the Healthy Novato Peter Haas Family Fund. And that is encompassing this year TK through 12th grade. It's every school, including the charter.
Okay. I did catch the charter, but not specifically that it was for all elementaries too. I just want to make sure.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Just very quick, just looking forward to the luncheon on Thursday at San Marin with Tanya is putting on. So looking forward to learning
thank
a lot
you. And
there.
we're doing the same thing for the Novato students on Thursday as well.
Oh, I didn't catch that part.
So,
Okay.
that just came up, and that was my mistake. I was thinking that finals were the week after next, so we got dates confused, but so we're.
I RSVP'd for San Marin, so I'll go there.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. Okay, any other questions?
Okay, we'll turn it over to Phoebe.
Yeah.
Good evening. So I'm Phoebe Smith, and as mentioned earlier, I started with restorative justice, working with the YMCA, facilitating at 4 schools and a middle school. And coming into this year, the elementary schools were discontinued in terms of being provided the services that I was providing through the YMCA originally. But I did maintain my services with one school, Pleasant Valley, who wanted to maintain the consistency of restorative justice. Just for a personal opinion, there's many thoughts about the fact that elementary schools have social emotional learning models that they purchased and utilize in their schools independently. But restorative justice truly can be a vehicle for the students to utilize the tools that they're learning in these social emotional learning models in their day-to-day interactions with one another. Restorative justice is an opportunity for them to come together and work out their issues and things that are happening in real time, opposed to just sitting in the classroom and receiving tools and then expected to enact those tools as things come up. So that's my belief and my push around restorative justice in elementary schools, coming out powerfully this year as well. And hopefully the information I share with you this evening will show you that some powerful work can be done with elementary school students, TK through the 5th grade as well. The scope of my services as an independent consultant this year has covered and expanded up through staff and campus supervisor training, professional development, and support. I've demonstrated in many classrooms at Pleasant Valley and co-facilitated circles for teachers who are working on developing their communities as a part of the preventive aspects of the restorative justice model. There's a 5-part series that I've been working with teachers on. And they consist of community building in the classroom, communication, respect, how to interact with one another, and conflict resolution. So these are different topics that we bring to the circle at the beginning of the school year as a community building tool in the preventative mode instead of the reactive mode when someone gets in trouble. I have to look at this over here this way because I cannot see that over there.
Yeah, same here.
So I actually brought an example of the sequence. I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with the sequence that we actually go through when we have a referral of a student to restorative justice. The teacher or a student or the administrator can make a referral to restorative justice. I meet with each participant with the incident, the victim, the offender, people in the community who might have been affected. And so we have pre-hearings individually with each one of those people. Then we come together for the restorative justice circle. And after that, we work on a community service project. A lot of times I really like to have all of the people who were involved work on a community project together. And then they present it to the greater community. So this year, we had an incident where a student threatened physical harm on a teacher. And so the teacher made the referral to me. And I spoke with the teacher at length. I spoke with the student at length. And I spoke with other people in the community, in the classroom in particular, because this is where the incident happened. And the community members were spoken to because they're the ones who saw the student do the thing that they were threatening upon the teacher. And so they were affected also, and they appreciated being brought into the conversation because that did leave an impression and an effect on them. And so meeting with the student, we basically, instead of, and by the way, the student did get suspended, but I would like to assert that if they hadn't had the opportunity to go through this process in the community, having the opportunity to go through the process of the restorative justice circle, that we would have these results that Amy's talking about and what happens to students in the long term when these issues are not addressed in this way. So basically, once talking to the student, the student was angry. And I call it putting a 10 on a 2. So basically, the action that they took was a 10, and the incident should have been somewhere around a 2. They were doing something in class they weren't supposed to be doing, and the teacher sent them out. It was during a time that they really like, and they got mad. So then they threatened harm on the teacher. And so we worked on, me and the student worked on this poster, for you to read it, but just so you could see evidence that this is something that we would put together. And as a result, so we picked 4 different instances where, you'd have different levels of addressing your anger. And so as a result of that, he had a better understanding of where he went wrong in his decision making, went back to the classroom, presented this to the community, and the community got to ask questions. And I think the beautiful part was they got to acknowledge the student for standing up there and admitting they were wrong, and understanding that they really not just affected the teacher, but they had harm to repair amongst his classmates, because now he was looked at as a student who they couldn't trust because other students saw him doing something this negative upon the teacher. So it was a really positive experience, I think, for the student and for the greater community and the teacher. I've also been asked to go to different schools within the district, even though I've just been at Pleasant Valley primarily this year, to work with larger groups of students who are dealing with various issues in relationship to, harassment, bullying, severe name calling, racially based name calling in particular. I've had 3 circles where I've gone to schools, middle school and high school, where racial slurs are being used overtly, and so we had group conversations dealing with that. The people who were using the slurs came to the circles, and other community members came to the circle, and then we had conversations around that issue. And also the students who were at the circle, that participated in the circle at Sinaloa, actually requested a continuation of the conversation. So we've had 2 more meetings since then to further discuss what can actually be done by the students to change the culture that obviously exists in that school around how people feel about racial slurs and, the not being sensitive or empathetic to people who would be offended by those racial slurs. And then I also had circles with 2 sets of parents. Went very well. And and also staff members have asked me to come and also work if there's a conflict within a team, to come and sit in and do circles with their team as well. So I feel really good about the fact that they feel that restorative justice is a tool that they can use to solve issues even amongst themselves. So I just pushed the go, but it's not. Yeah. Oh, it did go? Oh, okay. All right. So my data for my results this year, 132 students referred to restorative justice. Small boy groups were also referred. I had 2, but one in particular, in regards to that particular piece of data, 132 students, I met with 5 boys 4 times. In one classroom, there were a group of boys who were being defiant with the teacher, and so I pulled them out and did that 5-session community building workshop with all 5 boys independently in a small group because they needed extra attention around those issues. So that is contributed to that data as well. 42 completed conflict resolution circles. 9 students requested community circles themselves. I had 9 circles with a number of students, but a student came up and asked me to do the circle. 3 reoccurring students, meaning that most of the time I find that once someone goes through the restorative justice process, they don't go back through the process again. But one out of 3 did this year, and one out of 132 did not go through the process and have a positive outcome. They were referred back to the principal, meaning, they don't want to do this and they just would rather take a suspension or continue their behavior as is or whatever. And I would consider that student a tier 3 student under the multi-tiered systems of support. And that was just one out of the whole 132 that I met with. The top 3 incidences that I found, particularly at Pleasant Valley, but also at other elementary schools. I work with before and after school care through the YMCA also. So I've been able to do focus groups and have conversations with other students, and it's similar at other schools as well, that the top 3 incidences that occur at school are physical harm, harassment, meaning deliberate annoyances, name calling, teasing, and they really made that distinction because I'm helping them make the distinction between, harassment and bullying, which is different. And so they put that harassment, not bullying, as one of the top 3, and verbal assaults was also in the top 3. And then in coordination with Amy, she has given me the permission to go around to the fifth graders of 2 elementary schools, middle school, and a high school to have focus groups to really hone in on some of the specific issues that students are dealing with in their day-to-day experiences at school. And so I think it's really important that we kind of get that from the students and not go in with a preconceived idea of what we think the issues or the problems are that we see. Because I always told my students, I know you have this underground organization that you all are, running, and I need to know what's going on. So that's kind of the energy I come with when I'm talking to students to get more information. So that's why I talk to 5th graders, 8th graders, and 12th graders, because they're all leaving, and they'd be glad to tell us.
Yep. Give them up.
To support the students coming up behind them, and give back to their communities that they're leaving. So the top 5 concerns after having those focus groups are people. These are students' words. People going out of their way to be mean. And that was the top. Physical fights or physical contact, right? Like people putting their hands on other people, pushing, or whatever the case might be. And then as we were having these conversations, I put in quotation, rudeness never stops, because that was kind of like it encapsulated what everybody was talking about at the time when they were talking about all these different incidents that happened to them at school. And people just feel like it's rude, like people are just being rude to other people and not, having any kind of civility amongst one another. Making fun of others' differences and racism was in the top 5, and then making people feel too anxious to come to school. And the way that I derived that information, that data, is I had the students that came, which was about 12 students. It was a small group for each school, and they broke out into small groups, and they did an exhaustive list within their individual groups, and they came together, and then they prioritized to see what things are on the list that were, in common. And so that's how we got our top 5. And then I put them all the schools together, elementary and middle school and high school. And that's just the top 5, but I do want you all to see all of the concerns that the students shared with me in the focus group. So I brought a list of those for you to look at your leisure.
Very much. All right. Any questions? Trustee Millerick.
Interesting exercise. So I have conversations around this, but it's always with my daughter, who teaches at high school, and she teaches either high-end kids who are all going to Harvard or MIT or someplace because their parents said so, or teaching in the continuation high school where those choices aren't there, but it's always in a environment where there's some stress. And the big thing that she talked about is the dynamic of having to refer someone to the office and the role that the assistant principal and the office plays in managing classroom discipline. And how it sets a stage. It's more about setting a stage than it is actually solving the problem in that exercise. So have you looked at that dynamic? Do you get involved in the before you're probably even involved, what's going on, the precursor events that leads up to finally having to have a conversation around a restorative justice?
Can you rephrase your question?
Yeah, sure. So what are the activities that make you think somebody's going to end up in restorative justice? What are the early warning signs? How's that? Is that better?
Well, anyone can come to restorative justice because people make mistakes every day. And so there aren't any particular students, I think, that, are referred. I think that if someone offends another person verbally or whatever, that they can be referred, because that's a part of the learning process of how we interact with each other within the community and what our responsibilities are as responsible citizens in the community. So there's like we have our 3 tiers, our multi-tier systems of support where we kind of like pigeonhole students. And of course, the lower tier is where the majority of students fall, because they basically go along with what's prescribed by the school community. And then you have your second tier that need the additional interventions, and then you have your third tier that might need outside interventions. Mm-hmm. So you know, you could put people in, but it's all over the place in terms of who shows up.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. So, can we go back and this is a good time to approve the resolution that was pulled by trustee. So nobody, I know people are waiting. So can we do that? Is that okay with the board? Okay, we got Greg first, Greg Mack first, and then Trustee Cooper second.
You want to identify what the resolution is?
Yes. Do you want to read it? Yes, it's this is item in the consent item 16K, and it says resolution number 36, 2018-2019, to commit to blueprint for equity planning and implementation. Yeah, thank you. All right, so we have a first and a second, and any discussion? All right, it got approved. And so let's do the call, and we got 6-0, 1 absent. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. So our next item is a staff report. All right, thank you very much for restorative justice. Okay, next item is professional development plan, and we have Dr. Amy Carter.
I think you're getting Director Larson.
We can share the stage, though, if she is back and has something to add. Let's see here.
You know, I have a background in this area, actually, believe it or not, all of my graphic design and yearbook background. All right, so our professional development plan for 1920, and I'm going to give you a brief overview, and then, of course, if you have any questions or want specific details about any of the individual items that I mentioned, I'm happy to answer and give details. I'm going to start, however, by looking at how 2018-19 went. I think this year we had a lot of feedback from teachers and from administrators around our professional development throughout the year. As you guys know, our district professional development was all planned around content team and grade level team time. The majority of the team time within the elementaries was around Lucy Calkins and the Reader's Workshop, but that was a very limited amount of time, and so that is where we saw a lot of additional PD happening this year. And so we know that there was a great deal of professional development happening outside of just our scheduled PD days. So in summary, and you guys have, I believe, the graphs, you do have that, and I don't know that you have the graphs, but I will send you, if you don't, the email that has all of the charts of our actual feedback. But I identified the 4 most common strengths and areas for growth that we heard in our feedback. After every district-wide professional development day, we sent out the same survey. So one of the issues we challenged is, or the challenges we had in previous years, is we always sent out a feedback form, but the feedback we were asking was different. So it was hard for us to measure growth over time and look for patterns and trends to help improve in the future. So the strengths that were very consistent was having time to meet in content and grade level teams, having a consistent focus throughout the year, differentiating timelines to meet the needs of each team. And so each of those Lucy Calkins teams was specific to what the actual grade level needed or where they were in their progression within the units. And as far as our content teams, each of those was facilitated either by a teacher leader or by one of the instruction team. And each of those plans were differentiated for that team. So yes, everyone was working on learning targets and moving into proficiency scales, but each team was starting in a very different place. So what the year looked like for math was vastly different than what it may have looked like, for example, for social studies, where a lot of the focus was on adopting new curriculum, while also looking at learning targets. So the timeline to meet their needs. And then teacher leaders being involved in the planning and facilitation of those teams. As you know, we really
saw the benefit of having that and took that to the next level, and that's where the inception of our teacher leadership came from, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. Areas for growth. First and foremost, which was no surprise, was traveling on minimum days. On minimum days, when we have teams traveling, we lose significant time, and by the time everyone gets together, not only is time limited, but it's the very end of the day. It's a challenging time to get anything productive done, so it feels like a waste of time. Moving forward, we've committed to not having travel on minimum days, so all teachers will stay at their own sites and we will go to them and make sure that we have either facilitators or site administrators ready to facilitate on those days. The next was inconsistent facilitators for some of the teams. So there was definitely some value around having teacher leaders, but making sure that those facilitators were the same every time so that there was consistency. Finding ways for small groups within each team. So a lot of the work we did this year was whole group. At this point, some of the feedback, and especially this last, was now that we have a lot of the group discussions down, we really want to be able to have time to focus on smaller details and smaller groups within the team. And then last but not least, using time for calibration rather than scoring. One of the most challenging PD days we found was when we had teachers coming together to score Mars tasks. And while they really appreciated the calibration time, they would have liked to have scored outside of that time so there could be more discussion and less time actually scoring. So we'll take that into account when we do calibration next year. Any question on that? Last year? Yes. Yes. You can see a pretty significant trend there. Yeah. All right, so here's our plan for next year. The biggest shift we have is in the August 20th date and the May 22nd. So as you know, in negotiations, we added a professional development day in the beginning of the school year. So we actually have 2 full days of professional development and 1 staff work day. So the 19th will be a full day. That's our typical all day. It will be trauma informed in the morning. It will be performance-based education in the afternoon, PBE. The 20th will be morning as district teams, and afternoon we'll be back at the school sites. Then you can look down the list. The rest of them are mirror what we usually have had, except for May 22nd, which in the past has always been a full day, and this year will be a minimum day. If you look at all the minimum days, you'll notice that it's either site or district PD, but all of it happens at the school sites. All of the district-wide teamwork this year or in the year to come will be focusing mainly on PBE. As you know, we have this wonderful teacher leadership team. This is the first opportunity I've had to share their names with you, so I wanted to present who will be on our team. We have 38 current leaders. Those leaders are equally representative of all schools, all grade levels, and all content areas. So I am very proud and excited that this will be a team that is not only working together to decide how PBE will look in NUSD, but will also be our teacher leaders, facilitators, and be able to provide a lot of input and guidance on professional development for their teams moving forward. This team has a wonderful list of partners. We had our first retreat with +1 leadership. So one of the challenges we've faced and feedback we've received from our teacher leaders in the past is, while they love to be teacher leaders, what we don't provide them is a lot of leadership training. And leading adults is vastly different than leading students. So what we've done is with this team, we've really invested a lot of the time we spend with them in developing their leadership skills, their facilitation skills, but also their own personal growth as a team. So this last 2 days we were in Santa Rosa in our first retreat. The team's focus was just developing how are they going to operate as a team? Who are we? What are our strengths? All of the things that we would expect a classroom teacher to do with their students in the first weeks of school. It was hugely successful, and I think that this group of people who may have seen each other from across the room a few times really came together and is excited to be working together as a single unit. The work for that was done by Mickey Porter, +1 leadership. She'll be returning to work with this team in the Dare to Lead, which some of you guys have attended before. She's also a facilitator for that, so she'll be working with this team on that training. In addition, this is the team that will be working directly with Jan and Tammy from Marzano Research, and then also Kelly Lavelle, who's been supporting our elementary PBE. And then, as you know, we have all kinds of wonderful PD opportunities, and this is where we want to be very careful this year with not overbooking on any one day or in any one area. So we've been keeping what I believe is going to be a much more effective calendar moving into next year to ensure that things are spread out evenly and no one person is in multiple places at once. Some of the examples of these opportunities include our PBL 101 for all new teachers, making sure we're maintaining that level of PBL 101. Readers Workshop will continue, much more limited than we've had it in the last year, as it's their second year. EL training, you'll notice we have two. Clark Consulting will continue with mainly our elementary and middle schools, but we're also going to be working with Avid. San Jose Middle School is going to be piloting the Avid Excel program. And then all EL teachers were invited to the Avid Summer Institute EL Strand, as that's a place where they're already finding great success on their campus, and their EL program is a fabulous program. So we want to start incorporating those methods. P3 will continue for elementary schools through MCOE, as will our trauma-informed instruction, which will be led off in the beginning of the year at our opening day. MTSS training, Diana Browning Wright. And social studies adoption training, TB determines. So as soon as we have an adoption recommendation from our teachers, we'll determine who's going to be providing that training. And then finally, our technology integration and digital citizenship. You can see that we're going to have PBL and our technology done by internal trainers. Yes, thank you. Avid Excel is a specific Avid program for middle school LTELs, so our long-term EL students. San Jose has a significant number, and they also have a wonderful Avid program, so this was a perfect culmination of tools. Essentially what we have is we have an EL, beginning EL, level 2, level 3, and level 4. The idea would be that for students who are already in level 4, rather than repeating level 4, making them an LTEL, we would have them in an Avid program that doubles as both study skills as Avid would have, but also very specific to EL, so it counts as their EL. And so it's just an additional support class for our students who have already been through our Kevin Clark and are now ready for the next level. Okay, Trustee Mullerich?
Thanks. Training. Trauma-informed instruction. What is trauma-informed instruction?
I'm going to let Amy come up, and then in addition,
All
I'm
the answers,
passing.
have you noticed? Or at least to my questions.
I know, but do you see how she's been scooting closer and closer and closer? In addition, you're going to be getting what would be the 6th slide in your presentation, but it was a last-minute add-on, so it's not in here. But we're going to just take a moment just to go over the administrative training that we'll be doing this year.
All right, I'm going to take a lot more time in the upcoming school year to really help you understand trauma-informed instruction, but this is the teaching style that I talked about with the 60 Minutes where Oprah spoke to Dr. Perry about trauma-informed instruction. What they're finding is that children who are exposed to trauma or distress, whether that be hunger or abuse or an inconsistent caregiver, that affects the limbic system and how they develop. So many of the behaviors that we see in the classroom that are disruptive, that are off task, that aren't paying attention, that are blowing out, have to do with the brain has been deregulated early on in that child's life. And so it's using practices that are evidence-based, science-based to lower those filters, to help create that sense of community and help retrain the brain so that they don't have that fight or flight thing triggered by things that normally wouldn't trigger you or I, but are being triggered because of the trauma that they have experienced. So giving the teachers those tools around the neuroscience in the brain, something we're very excited about and that most of the country is really looking into, and it's showing a lot of promise.
Cool. So there's a certain population that if you can identify, you say, I see this behavior, let's see if we can back this child away from that pattern, understanding how it probably occurred to begin with.
Correct.
Cool.
So a really quickly example is a child that has experienced trauma has a different fight or flight reflex. So if you think about a gazelle in the field who is startled, they look around and they look at the flock, and because they have bonds with the flock, they can tell by the adults around them that they don't need to panic. But a child that doesn't have that formation, their alarm system goes off, they look around, and they're deregulated, and they don't have the bonding to the adults that are near them or to the children that are near them to understand that they need to deregulate and manage those behaviors. So it's great stuff. I'm very excited about it. Lots of great research around it, and something we're bringing to Novato.
Cool, thanks.
Okay. Trustee Gasson. Okay. You talk about fight and flight, and also does that include freeze? Or okay, all right, thank you. Go ahead, Trustee Gasson.
Fight, flight, freeze, flock. Yeah.
Freeze.
Dr. Bruce Perry is a great one if you're looking for a summer read. The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog is his book. Really fascinating. Great stuff.
So first I want to say thank you for taking all the feedback and modifying what you're doing this year. I can't tell you enough, even as a parent, how much I appreciate that. And I'm sure the teachers do as well. One thing I feel like I've kind of not completely grasped is the layout for the trainings. And I get the dates that you have and actually in the outline for our board packet. With the specific days, but these additional PD opportunities, these are not optional. They're just not set on a certain date yet. Is that correct?
They are optional or for teams of teachers that are specified because of the work that they're doing. So, for example, PBL would just be for our new to NUSD teachers. Readers Workshop would just be for the teachers who are still seeking. Mainly it will be our second grade phonics teachers who still need additional support because the phonics wasn't out last year. And then small group instruction. So EL would just be for EL. So it's either optional training or if it's training that is just for a very small group. The one prior to that, this one, is the one that everyone participates on and is a part of our district calendar.
Right, okay. So that's what I understood. I just want to make sure. So my follow-up question to that then, and I'm not sure how it works, and feel free to get back to me later, but I think one of the things that I've just heard or observed or maybe just misunderstood is that each site can have their own training too. And so that,
absolutely.
Is there more coordination this year in making sure that those, like, do they funnel those requests through you guys or because I think what was happening, at least in some of the experiences I've had, is that you guys, I think it was presumed it was all coming from here, but I think the site also was doing a lot. So it was compounding the impression that there was a lot. And so is there any way to find out and make sure that the coordination doesn't overlap, that, you know, like I had one teacher, my daughter's teacher was out on Friday and Monday after there was like a holiday in there somewhere too. So it was a huge chunk and impact. And so just the sensitivity around making sure that there's thought on the school site side too.
So in that particular regard, a lot of that is district-wide. Last year, that was very specific to the combination of the ELA rollout for elementary, the P3 work, and the district professional development days. And so there was a very high number of days that some of our teachers were out because of that culmination of events last year. So absolutely that will be, it'll feel much less next year. The ELA rollout took up a significant amount of days out of class for teachers. So if you'll notice, these days are on the calendar, so those ones aren't affected. It's these ones that you're referring to. And unlike P3 will continue to be the same impact as it has been in the past. That is elementary school only, and only for the people who are members of those P3 teams. But there are site-based days when they take time to look at the results and the growth and do training around that on site. So when we're talking about site-based training, the principal does have their Wednesdays. And so typically 1 or 2 days a month, depending on the school's practices, there's specific training or PD or collaboration time that would be kind of put together by the school's instructional leadership team and their principals. But then again, that is on Wednesday, so it wouldn't necessarily be out of school time. I think what we're referring to is really that P3, and then the addition of the Readers Workshop, which will no longer be a significant problem this year.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we're moving to our next item, number D, 13D, and that's it's Governor May revised, and with Yancy Hawkins, Assistant Superintendent, Business and Operations.
All right, thank you very much. It's that time again, the May revise. In May, the governor makes a revision to his or her January budget proposal for the upcoming year. That budget proposal is based upon revenue numbers through April. The reason April is an important number is that's the largest tax collection month of the year for personal income tax. And personal income tax, especially our high earners in the state of California, drive a lot of the state budget and the revenue numbers. In January, the governor had three main proposals that we spoke about. The first was simply the statutory COLA. The second was some STRS relief for school districts. And the third was a special education plan to put some additional funding in special education. When we went over in January the potential impacts of each of those plans, so I wanted to give you an update on those because unfortunately there wasn't a lot of new information. Fortunately, there wasn't a large decrease in the funding, but there also wasn't really any additional funding in the K-12 budget. So the first, for the cost of living, the COLA, there was a small reduction from the January estimate of 3.46 to the 3.26%, which is the actual statutory COLA. So what that means to Nevada Unified is about $100,000 less than what the January budget proposed. In terms of STRS relief, statutorily in law now, the STRS rate was going to go to 18.1% in 2019-20. That's up from a little under 16.3% in the current year. In January, the governor proposed using one-time non-Prop 98 funding. That's an important note. Non-Prop 98 money to buy down that rate by about 1.1% to 17.1%. In the governor's May revision, he actually allocated a little bit more money towards that, reducing that to 16.7%. So what that means is about $100,000 to the positive from the January proposal. One thing that I do need to just note is the 16.7% is still an increase over the 2018-19 rate. So when they are giving relief from the increase. It is still increasing, but instead of almost 2%, it's increasing by about 0.5% into 2019-20. Special education, the governor updated his proposal and really focused on districts with over a 55% unduplicated pupil count. That's the so-called concentration grant school districts, as well as districts with above average identification of special education pupils. As we don't meet the 55% unduplicated count, we wouldn't be eligible for that funding under the governor's proposal. One potential ray of hope is that both the Senate and the legislature rejected the governor's plan, and they've got their own, so they'll be arguing over that over the next couple of weeks. As we move forward, the next couple important dates, obviously we're going to have to use the May revise as the basis for our budget for 2019, but at the state level, the legislature and the governor need to come to an agreement by June 15th in order to avoid not getting paid. And ever since they changed that rule to not getting paid, we haven't had a late budget yet. So knock on wood, we'll continue to do that. And then the state budget needs to be approved by June 30th. So June 15th is kind of that next date where we'll hear the framework of the state budget. So with that, I'm happy to open it up to questions.
Okay, board. It's a staff report. Okay, Trustee Millerick.
So I'm looking at the report on the section on computer science. Does that affect us in any significant way?
From a financial standpoint, no, but from an academic standpoint and a potential to be leaders and involved, yes. So hold on, let me pull it up real quick.
There's 15 million in one-time broadband infrastructure and 1 million in one-time non-prop for over to the State Board of Education to hire a state computer science coordinator. And I'm wondering if...
So the first half of that, we will not be eligible
Okay.
for. That's more to get to rural and tough to find areas, especially around the state CASP testing.
Yep.
To continue that.
There's some people that are really out in the country.
Absolutely. I mean, even in this county, there's some people that are, but we're right along the 101 corridor. But the $1 million in one-time non-Prop 98 funding available to the State Board of Education to hire a state computer science coordinator, that's one area that that hopefully we will, given some of our areas of expertise, that we will definitely, once that person is in place, that we will reach out and hopefully be able to give input and potentially even serve on a committee.
Okay.
With them.
Yeah, I mean, with local Nevada residents who have served at the state level, it's a tradition that we have, so maybe we can find ways to engage in that organizational growth. I mean, everything from Jan Langtree, who moved up there to take over some of the significant state programs, to Joel Montero. I mean, so we have legs in this area. Maybe we can.
Absolutely, and our IT director has already began that process. So
cool. Thanks.
Okay, Trustee Gasson.
So just in terms of context, when I was meeting with Senator McGuire, one of the things he said is that he recognizes that, you know, we're having a hard time, but the rural communities are struggling even more than we are. Just how painful it is for them. So they have an awareness, but at the same time, there seems to be just so much need in other areas in northern Sonoma, or northern and west Sonoma County.
Terrifying.
So yeah, it's
isolated. Yep.
hugely isolated. They can't find staffing. They have transportation issues. You know, and I feel terrible because I know how much we need it, and just thinking that they're in such a worse place too.
I was having a conversation with a couple of the communities up there recently. It's middle of nowhere.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Yancy. Okay, our next item is public hearing, and it's Resolution 37, 2018-2019, approval of California Government Code 4217.10. And it's a resolution to enter into energy conservation construction contract with ABM Building Solutions to provide lighting and heating, ventilation, and air conditioning projects. I'll open it up. Okay. Oh, nobody? All right, I'll close it. Okay. Next item is 15B, Measure G. And we'll give it again to Yancy Hawkins, Assistant Superintendent, Business and Operations, and Mike Woolard, Executive Director of Facilities.
All right. Unfortunately, I think you get me for the rest of the evening.
Okay.
But on May 21st, I brought the board a process and timeline for Phase 2 allocation and prioritization of the Measure G bond program. I pulled up the presentation from the last time. I'm not going to go through that presentation again, but I wanted to bring back the Phase 2 is the remaining $117 million of Measure G, besides the $105 million of Phase 1 work that is in process at this point. And so at this point, I wanted to bring back that process and timeline for approval by the board. To be clear, this isn't any of the allocations or the individual items. This is simply the proposed timeline and process to move forward. So with that, I'm happy to open it up to any questions.
Okay, board, this is an action item.
I'm prepared to move the process and timeline based on having it presented at a previous meeting and had time to analyze it, so I'm prepared to move on the.
I have a second.
Okay, Tom Cooper.
I have one comment I'd
Okay,
like to offer.
discussion.
Yep.
Trustee Mulrick?
In the last meeting, we talked about the importance of being able to protect this district from our physical plant falling apart and the need to work smart, spend the money wisely, and keep the deferred maintenance items in hand. And I would like to add one more thought to that before we take the motion. As I was reflecting on that conversation and how we handled the bond measure of 95 or whatever it was, we took some of that money and had it sitting in, we didn't spend the entire bond amount. We had cash sitting around that came out of some reinvestment funds, but we had it, and we used that for emergency repairs over the 5 years. And the last of it got attempted to be allocated to fix a ball field at San Marino under Superintendent Cunningham's leadership, and it was stopped by this board, and we left the money in reserve for emergency issues. And I would like us to, as we go forward, think about doing the same with this bond measure. We're up against the bonding limit that the state allows us to encumber local homeowners, and at some point we're going to need some reserves for a roof failure or something that happens that we just can't foresee now. So with us, so I'd like to suggest we think about that going forward. I don't think that's a conversation for tonight. I'd just like to add that to the list for us to talk about as we go forward. So with that, I'd be prepared to vote in favor of the motion.
So we have a motion on the table for a second and call for action. Okay, that's 6-0, 1 absent. All right, thank you. Motion passes. And next we have Yancy again, and we'll talk about item C, resolution number 37, 2018-2019, approval of California Government Code 4217.10.
All right, this is actually it's a pretty easy one to move through around the reason why we do this and what we would be passing. So Code 4217 allows for an alternative process for a design build process around energy efficiency projects. And so this is an alternative to your standard design bid build, potentially lease back. This is an alternative. And one of the things that you need to do in order to fulfill 4217, sorry, I should just bring it back. The district has used 4217 before with the solar projects that we did at a majority of our sites a couple of years ago, obviously solar being a energy efficiency project. So one of the things that you need to do is you need to fulfill the requirement that this project saves energy. Well, these projects are being funded by Proposition 39. These are state categorical funds that are only to be allowed to be used for energy efficiency projects. And even more so, they have a energy savings threshold, or an SIR, which is a requirement that you will save enough money in electricity to cover the cost of the projects, even though they're being funded by Proposition 39. So within the Proposition 39 funding, we've already had to meet that energy savings threshold of 1.01. So this resolution notes the process and that we do meet those saving thresholds. In fact, we are only required to, we are required to meet that not only on energy savings, but potentially on maintenance savings and all that. On these projects, we meet the energy savings threshold just simply on energy alone, not to mention hopefully the maintenance savings of having newer equipment. So I will be bringing the contract at the next item, but this item is a resolution that notes that we will have the savings to cover that, and the attachment shows the calculations that have been submitted to the state CEC, which is the governing body of Proposition 39. So with that, I'm happy to open it up to questions.
Board, any questions? Okay, Trustee Tom Cooper and then Millerick.
Yancy, just reading over the resolution, so it's my understanding we're going to, excuse me, save approximately right around $10,000 for over the course of 25 years?
About $1 million.
Okay, so I'm obviously reading that wrong, because contract with ABM is approximately $1 million and some change, right?
Yes, 1 million in. Oh, I know what you mean. So the net savings you're noting on the project are at least $10,000. Yes. So
I'm just reading right off here. I'm not.
Sorry. No. I misunderstood. So the savings was the $1,032,000. I'd have to pull up the exact number, and the cost of the project is about $1,020,000. And so the net savings. So that is net savings just purely on that. The savings are truly the $1,030,000 because this is categorical funding that is not allowed for any other uses but energy efficiency projects. So yeah, I mean, depending on how you want to look at it, we're saving $10,000 or $1,030,000.
So we're spending $1 million out of one pocket that we don't have any control over, but we're saving $1 million in operating costs that hit back the general fund that we do need relief on.
Yes, that is correct.
So, yeah. So it's a net benefit of $1 million to the district's general fund.
Yes.
Even though funny pocket mathematics.
Yeah, we couldn't use these for any other purposes but this, and we will. Yeah, so we're spending money out of categorical funding and receiving relief in our general fund budget.
Yeah, this is why you're supposed to have a doctorate to be a leader in a school district, is because this kind of magic. I'll move adoption.
Okay, we have Trustee Millerick and Derek No. All right, all in favor? Okay, 6-0, 1 absent. All right. So then we move to our next item, and that's award contract for Proposition 39 energy efficiency projects to ABM Building Solutions. That's item D.
All right, so
we talked about this on the 21st already.
We did.
Yeah.
Yes. So on the 21st, we discussed our criteria of how we were going to make a decision. We used both the design bid build process based on our early CEC application that included some more HVAC projects and heater type projects to the design build projects of ABM. ABM's a company that the city of Novato uses, is nationwide. So when we looked at savings, the overall savings was significantly more on the design build project. It included more lighting, interior lighting at both high schools and Sinaloa, and more importantly, it actually met the SIR that the CEC required us to meet. So in order to do the design bid build, the district would have had to use its own general fund process. So I'm bringing forth the contract for $1,020,000 and change, I think. And that is strictly out of Proposition 39 categorical funding that cannot be used for any other purpose. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Any questions, board? Go ahead, Trustee Millerick.
This summer, we're going to be implementing the new Wi-Fi system, at least on high school and middle school campuses.
Yes.
And my understanding at this point is the wiring and the Cat 6 wiring that's in place to carry the power to drive that system is in place. But it would be interesting to talk to our IT director, have you ask him, is there any opportunity, if we got people in there rewiring and moving stuff, is there anything that we can do at the same time that will save us operating costs going forward, even if we have to pay for it out of bond money. But we're going to have electrical people in the buildings doing work. So it's just an open question. Is there an opportunity to make some savings that we haven't thought about?
That is a potential. We will be at 3 of those sites, and so if there is any potential for synergy there, we will do that.
Yeah, and I don't know that there is. I just don't want to at least ask the question.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's see, so I believe we are done. This concludes the meeting, and so,
think
no,
we
wait
have
a
to
minute,
move
wait a
on
minute.
this.
No, we have, is this an action item? That's right, okay. So, anyone wants
I'll
to?
move to
I'll
accept
second.
the recommendation.
Okay, so trustee Nell and then trustee Millerig. Okay, and I'll call for the vote. Okay, 6-0 and 1 absent. And this concludes, and our next meeting is on June 8th, this Saturday, 9 o'clock, here in this building. And thank you, right here, in this building, 9 o'clock, Saturday. All right.